All right, good afternoon, everybody. My clock says 2 o'clock, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Washington County School District Board of Trustees to order. And to lead us in the pledge today, Ivy hasn't been with us for a while, so let's have her lead us in the pledge.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, thank you. Oh, roll call should have been first. That was a reorder, sorry. Okay, all right, now we'll go to roll call.
Thank you, Madam President. President Taylor.
I'm here.
Vice President Nicolette.
Good afternoon.
I am here. Trustee Church.
Here.
Trustee Mayberry.
Here.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Here.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Student Representative Ivy Botmal. Botmal. Okay.
Like you bought them all.
Student Representative Ivy Botmal.
All right. After all of that.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much, Madam Clerk. Let's go right to our consent agenda. These are items that are typically routine in nature, and we don't have any requests. I'll open it up for a moment. Any requests from trustees to pull anything? We don't have any. Let the record show that Trustee Church has none. I did that because he came up to me and, hey, did you see it? So, all right. So seeing none, why don't we go right to public comment before we consider a motion to approve these consent agenda items?
John Eppolito for item 2.04.
Welcome, Mr. Eppolito.
Thank you. My name is John Ippolito. I'm with Protect Nevada Children, and I have 2 kids left in the district. On item 2.04, I wanted to mention the RGJ article that just got published this week. Former Washoe County School District counselor sentenced to life in prison for producing child pornography. You guys probably remember him. He got arrested last year. When I spoke to the inspector about that case, I informed the inspector about Infinite Campus. You guys remember Infinite Campus, right? The most massive database ever created on children in human history, Infinite Campus. The inspector knew about Infinite Campus. It sounds like he might have had kids in the school. What the inspector didn't know is back then, not everybody had access to all of Infinite Campus. The counselor had access to all the pertinent information, psychiatric, counseling, discipline, minor discipline, and that is where I wondered if this gentleman was, I don't think he's a gentleman, he's a convicted felon now, if this guy was using Infinite Campus to hunt for victims. To me, it never was clear, and the RGJ never really discussed that in this article. They just said social media. There's a chance he was using Infinite Campus to search for victims in the schools. I don't know that he was or wasn't. But today, we have 2.04 on the agenda, and that's another vendor that we're going to pay $1.7 million to and give them access to our kids' data. In the additional, if you guys read it, in the additional information, it says that this vendor gets access to student attendance, discipline, their student climate survey data. That's supposed to be private. They've been saying all along that's private data. How do they get access to that? Also, recently, you guys just approved communities and schools within the last month or so, and last year you had bad information about community and schools from Paul. Paul told you communities and schools does not create a database on our kids. Then you voted to give them another $450,000 or whatever it was. Last month, Paul said, oh, I made a mistake last year. And then he couldn't answer how long does communities and schools hold that data. But what we do know is that, according to Paul, if he was right, communities and school has access to everything in Infinite Campus. So these people that you're going to give $1.7 million to today, do they have access to everything in Infinite Campus? And the reason we keep asking this is the data that is going to affect the future of our kids. even if there's never a data breach. Hopefully some of you are starting to understand that. You can find us at protectnevadachildren.org.
Thank you, Mr. Eppolito.
You're welcome.
Pablo Nava Duran for item 2.04.
Welcome, Mr. Duran.
Good afternoon, good morning, whether you're asleep late or not, but here we go. So, I wanted to saw the art teacher in New York about this former Desert Sky middle school teacher. Cancer. He was cancer. He got arrested last year for sex trafficking. Now he got to so the judge sent him to life in prison, which is good because he should not be sold to the victim, to child, and the teacher and counsel should be protecting the student. Should not give out to the public or not be sold to the dark websites. And I do know, I feel like we need a protection on Adjourn campus and a data protection for the children. And then last April when my teacher, he also my sister teacher Jose Flores got arrested for having not gonna say that to student and everything. He got arrested. He put on leave, and we got a new band teacher. So it's great. It's great to have a new band teacher. So, and I also when I'm a newly substitute teacher, so I think the fingerprints over here was great. It's necessary to have that. So. Right, so I feel like we should have a protection on data and keep a student protection from ever happening data. And I think I know you did a great job for this. I think we need more careful for that. So
Thank you, Mr. Duran.
That's all I have for consent.
Okay, thank you very much, JJ. As we bring it back here to the table, I want to note that staff is requesting a little bit more time on consent agenda items 2.02 and 2.07. So for your consideration today, to my colleagues, looking for a motion to approve consent agenda items 2.02 through 2.06 and 2.08 through 2.14. A motion on the floor from Trustee Rodriguez. Is there a second?
Clarification,
Yes.
staff wanted more time on 2.0,
02 and 2.07.
and so the request is for 2.03 through 2.06?
Yes, that's what I said. Did I not say that?
No.
It should be 2.03.
Yes.
What did I say? 2.03. Thank you for the correction.
No worries.
So then consent agenda item 2.02 was pulled. And so, Trustee Rodriguez, can we just friendly amend that? 2.02. I was reading it too. I don't know how I messed that up. JJ's like, how much easier can I make it for Pete's sakes? 2.03 through 2.06 and 2.08 through 2.13. That was amended friendly. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded. Motion from Trustee Rodriguez. Second from Dr. Nicolette. Any discussion? Any further? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Opposition? All right, the motion is carried. Let the record show it is unanimous. And again, thank you, Dr. Nicolette,
You betcha.
for catching that item. Okay, agenda item 3.01. This is a presentation, discussion, and possible action by the Board of Trustees to approve direction to the superintendent on a possible proposal such as student and staff supports, increased funding, educator licensure, increased student safety resources, and/or renew of statewide mandates for the Washoe County School District's bill draft request, otherwise known as a BDR, as allowed by the Nevada Revised Statute 218D. .025. This is for the 2023, the upcoming Nevada legislative session. And this is coming from myself and from Dr. Nicolette. Just for a quick review informational, we get by law, by statute, the school district, the school board, on behalf of the district, we have one bill draft request, BDR, that we can submit to the legislature for consideration. And then hopefully what happens in this is that we have legislators that will kind of help champion this for us and kind of usher this through and all of that. So this is a time, there's an upcoming deadline, I believe it's September 1st, when this has to be submitted to the LCB, the Legislative Council Bureau. So this is a time for us to have a discussion about what might that, when we get one opportunity, one bite at this apple. And this is simply a BDR, bill draft request, something we want them to consider. And just as we look at this, the things that are important, we know there are things certainly for us as a district, those things, what do we think is going to help us the most? And for a couple things for consideration, from my standpoint is I would like us to be mindful of, one, let's look at it this way. What is, if we know that there are some things that we need that may or may not get a chance to get legs. I would like to see us, as we have our discussion, and we really should have a discussion around it, let's talk about what a bill that we actually, have an opportunity to really have an impact and to get passed, so that we don't have anything, as I've been saying, as DOA, right, that's dead on arrival. Additionally, in the little bit of experience I've had in this for these past few sessions is we have a better opportunity as we consider BDRs that might not just be impactful for us as a district, but also for the state, right? For the other counties and other districts, because there are a lot of votes out there that we need. So before, you remember that I'm just a bill. I'm only remember that little. Remember that for right, huh? Yeah, but for it to really get a chance to get legs and get some momentum and the support that's necessary for it to be passed. So this is a great time. There are some ideas. Thank you, JJ, for working hard to kind of give us some ideas of those things for us to consider for our conversation. So that for that being said, Dr. Nicolette, you want to go? Want to jump in and see your lights on? I know you have some thoughts on this.
You brought up a very important point when we talk about strength, something that's really going to have legs. I think I'd like to talk about exactly, if possible, what that means. What are the variables that underlie something having legs and having strength? Is it that it doesn't cost any money? Is it that the majority of people think it's a great idea? I mean, how do we decide that? And I'm really throwing that out as a question to my colleagues.
I think that's a really good question, and sometimes you don't really know, right? But as much as we can, those of us who've had opportunities to spend time talking with legislators, working with the state association, especially from the superintendent standpoint, they're more involved. And I know you just got here, but I know you've had had an opportunity to have some conversations with that association, with your superintendent colleagues. That gives us some idea of whether those things that are being considered from other districts or from a statewide that could have the potential for a statewide impact, because there are things that we know that are really, really important to us from the Washoe County School District. But if it can't get us anywhere, right? If it's only important to us in the Washoe County School District, it's highly unlikely that it's going to garner the support. I think from a financial standpoint, I think that raises that's a good question as well, because if there's a reason, this is just in my own mind, if there's a reason to not support it, that's an easy way for something to go down because it's going to cost money. If there's no revenue, no means of revenue attached to it, which we don't control that, right? So it'd be hard for us to attach a way, and this is how we're going to pay for it, because we don't get to say these are additional ways that the state can generate revenue. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense, and I kind of throw that thought out there, having recently attended Commission on School Funding, their meetings. A consistent discussion is about opportunities for increased revenue, and taking some deep dives. Really, there's a lot to learn because it's a very complex tax system that we have in Nevada. Taking a look at those opportunities, and I almost feel at a loss for choosing something like per pupil funding, for example. I can't imagine that there's more than a handful of people in the state of Nevada who wouldn't say, yes, we could use more money for our students to give them what they need and to be able to ensure academic success. Having said that, it's hard to identify what the fiscal impact would be for something like that. Even when the Commission on School Funding is right now in the middle of this discussion, I feel like I personally don't have something to hang my scarf on that's definitive. And so it kind of leads me toward something I find to be very forthcoming, frustrating, and that is something that's minimal, that will not have the impact for our students and our staff and our community, our families, that I would like to have. And so just throwing that out there, I feel a level of frustration as to how to move forward with this, especially with the September 1st deadline. So I'm looking forward to my colleagues' thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Nicolette. Trustee Mayberry?
Yeah, just to piggyback on, thank you, Madam President. Just to piggyback on Vice President Nicolette, in my experience, there's never really one bite of the apple. This evolves, and whatever we pick as a BDR, and what other topics are important to us, there's always opportunities to find a vehicle through another legislator, through other conduits. So the session always sort of tends to start off slowly, and then it picks up pace maybe midway, halfway through. I would recommend we pick something that doesn't have a fiscal note to it, at least not a high fiscal note, because that's going to be I think a tougher hill to climb. But will we have another meeting, or a meeting in August? Will we have another?
We have another board meeting in 2 weeks.
Another board meeting. So that's when. Will that be the meeting where we actually vote for?
If we don't pick it here, we have there's another opportunity for us. If it's on the agenda for now, but intentionally it's on the agenda with 2 weeks, 2 opportunities if we wanted to discuss it. If we don't land someplace here, in terms of one bite at the apple, but we only get one bite in terms of submitting what we want.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Right.
That,
there's certainly others that they're partners, hopefully, from our Northern Nevada delegation that can help pull something forward, if it connects to something that's seemingly important to them, that seems to be important to them as well.
Right. So would we just sort of throw things out and see what sticks? Is that what you're?
Well, I think if we look at the agenda item, I think it's a good place to start. JJ did some work, I know that, in looking at what are those items that have to be specific enough from an open meeting law standpoint, right? But also broad enough, and Anthony's over there nodding yes, and also broad enough so that it doesn't limit us in terms of something that we say, hey, we think this might be great from a conversation standpoint. If there's something that's outside of this, it would have to be on a different agenda. But the whole intent from this, and I know JJ was following people around at 2 or 3 events, trying to get ideas, just talking to folks and talking to staff and so on. And I know the superintendent's reached out to some folks, as have I, just for how do we write this in a way to allow us to have the conversation and not be in violation of the open meeting law, but have a discussion. I think some of the things that we've talked about, I think are really important. Obviously, we want something that we know can get some legs and have some impact. We certainly can come back around, but it's best if we don't have to, but it doesn't mean it's over, so you're right about that. And again, my recommendation would be, if we were going to put something forward with the fiscal impact, that we have to support that with where does that money come from. Otherwise, it's just a really easy, okay, great, thanks, in my mind, right? God bless you. Trustee Smith?
Thank you, President Taylor. A couple questions. The first is, since you are senior sitting member of the board, can you...
Senior?
Tenured.
Oh, tenured. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you're senior, right.
Could you tell us about the last BDR that the board submitted 2 years ago?
Geez.
And second part, have we ever been successful with anything we've ever submitted?
Okay, I can say... I'll let you take the first part. Thank you, Emily, for saving me, because I just got back from vacation last night, so I didn't get to look up the last one, but Emily knows, so thank you.
And in fairness, I should have probably posed this before literally right now in public.
Oh, that's okay. That's why we have a great staff, because she's ready.
Yes, Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer for the record. During the last legislative cycle, we put forward a bill to put a pause on the student learning objectives for teachers during the pandemic, and we were successful in moving that bill through legislation. There were some modifications to it during the process, and so we really wanted a 2-year exemption. We got a 1-year exemption, which our educators were so grateful for, and we were very, very grateful to our legislators for their work in support of that.
Thank you so much. So to continue on, the money thing is really where it's hard, because when I think of something immediately that would potentially benefit the whole state, it has a dollar sign associated to it, and that would be funding for school safety. That is something that immediately comes to mind, but it has funding associated to it. So, and we don't even know where that would come from. But I just want to put out there that the first thing that always comes to mind is dedicated additional funding for school safety. But I recognize that we would be best served by something that does not have finances. So, to not also put someone else on the spot, but I am curious about our Superintendent Enfield, as she comes from a different state into this one, and I recognize that we're only going into week 6, not so much right now, but maybe as we discuss this in the future, I would be curious about what immediate differences you've noticed or opportunities that you think might exist on behalf of the state, since you have fresh eyes on this.
Please.
Thank you, President Taylor, and thank you, Trustee Smith. So we did not have this practice in Washington State, so this is a fun, fresh adventure for me as well. And what little I've learned, Lindsay briefed me on this before she left, so I have a little bit of context. I've spoken with some of the trustees. I do tend to, and while I think to the degree that Vice President Nicolette said, I think there's a widespread belief that we need to have a serious funding conversation. I had that conversation with the governor last week. That said, I don't know a bill that we put forward on that would do much to further that. That's a longer term, bigger conversation. So if it seems if we want to have impact with this BDR and potentially have it be adopted, to President Taylor's point, we'd want it to be something that we think our fellow districts around the state could get on board, that would benefit students across Nevada, not just Washoe County. To that end, I attended my first Nevada Association of School Superintendents meeting last week, and NAS, as they're called, they've been sort of putting together the priorities for superintendents across the state. And I thought, well, let me go review those and see if maybe there's the potential for something that would help work that we're doing here in Washoe. And one that jumped out, and there is it addresses funding a little bit through limiting unfunded mandates, which also helps us. But and would you like me to share it?
Please, if you would.
So one of the priorities that NAS is considering, and their list is still in draft, but I talked with them today to make sure I could share this, to modernize educational statutes to allow for innovations such as competency-based education, work-based learning, career and technical education, robotics, with the goal of providing more learning opportunities for students without adding more mandates that don't have financial backing. And I think there's a widespread belief among my fellow superintendents that we want our public schools to be schools of choice for our community members. And to that degree, we need to provide them with options and innovations that will appeal to a broad array of learners. I think this could potentially get some traction. I think it's something that would help work that we're doing. I think it would benefit all districts. I think it would help us push a conversation. Yes, we have to have the funding conversation. I will channel Trustee Church. We have to have a quality of education conversation as well around what we're offering within our schools to our students. So that's what I have to date. I know it's not fully fleshed out. I could certainly, if the trustees asked and directed me to, provide you with additional specifics if that would be helpful. But I offer that as one potential.
Thank you, Dr. Enfield. And I see you're like Trustee Church. One of the things I was just going to add to what something that Emily said when I did remember, I remember their student learning objectives, that the key thing is as we put something forward, whatever it is we decide that it is, it can still be modified along the way, which often happens, right? Negotiating with this or that. There was someone in leadership who really didn't like the bill as a whole and wanted to have no years, and so it was a compromise on 1 year. So, okay, not what we wanted, right? But it was certainly something that our educators appreciated, and it impacted teachers all across the state coming off of coming off of COVID, to give them a break, give them an exhale, to not have to do that. And so that's the kind of thing that we were successful at, because it was something that was broader. And I'm gonna dig through a little bit and see if I can find what we did 2 years before then. Trustee Church.
Thank you. This is very, very tough, and it is my first rodeo on something like this. A few of the notes that I had made and looked at, and I should have discussed it maybe with the superintendent first. Number one, in my opinion, no new taxes. I mean, I think you know my personality by now, that I think we can do it without new taxes. That said, the biggest issue we're facing is per pupil funding. So let me take that a step further. It's really the per pupil funding formula. Say that 4 times. Per pupil funding formula. And the allocation of those funds, which Washoe County is on the short end of that stick. So that may be part of the conversation of revising that formula. Just one thought. As the superintendent mentioned, these bill draft requests, we want to avoid duplication of effort. And that's part of the problem. We don't know what Clark County or Monroe or anybody else is coming up with for their BDRs. I will say that if we do something that does have a financial impact, and again, I'm opposed to new taxes, that it must have oversight. My 3 main criteria, if it were to go, oversight, it has to sunset, and it has to be very, very specific. Not just free money, but free money for a particular purpose. You know, free taxpayer money. This is on the back of the taxpayers. And I'm opposed to new taxes, but if there is some kind of a fee or a tax, it's got to be extremely specific and then sunset. So along those lines, I think one of the issues, and I made it clear I taught recruiting nationwide, and so here's part of my class for free, is recruiting and retention something that would get widespread support statewide from all the districts. And in my opinion, it's something the Department of Education or Department of Labor at the state level, somewhere at the state level, should take that responsibility. I've been researching, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but I've been researching military job fairs, for example. And you can't be sending Clark County send somebody, we send somebody, you know, Elko County sends somebody to these. That's not, it's counterproductive to send that. If the state took that responsibility under a bill draft request and was responsible for nationwide recruiting for the school systems, from bus drivers from accountants to groundskeepers to teachers. I was trying to think of a word with a Z, but from A to Z, if that was a state function, I'm just throwing it out on the table. And finally, I've said it before, I realize this probably does not have any kind of support or legs, but I would strongly support asking the legislature to modify WC1 to lower taxes. Imagine lowering taxes. Once the bonding is complete, we're pretty well built out on our schools. We still have a lot of things to do on maintenance, et cetera. And we're losing some money to the small counties with the lower taxes. And what I've proposed before is to lower that tax from 8.265 to 7.999, because that's a psychological barrier that I think would attract people back to Washoe County to buy their cars. And my point would be to modify WC1 to allow us as a board to have the discretion of whether we spend it for new teachers, for buses, for whatever it is, whatever purpose we see fit. Right now, we're locked into using it for new school facilities and maintenance. And I think we've met our promises made, promises kept. And at this point, many years later, maybe we need to modify that to allow us as a board to have more discretion on how that money is spent. So thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you, Trustee Church. I would say sales tax is county, so it may have, anything with WC1 may have to be here. But I haven't done the research, but because it was approved here, I would imagine that it would have to be amended at this, when I say here, I mean at the county level. I would imagine, yeah, that it would have to be amended at the county level as well.
I don't think so. I actually looked into this. And
Okay.
I think it's like a 3-year, like a statute of limitations, and after that 3 years, then the legislature, because the legislature authorized the vote in the
Yes.
committee. And
They
then
authorized the establishment
but
of the
it is
committee.
worth researching if it had legs.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I would I think the state approach from a recruiting standpoint, if it were a global type of a thing, the challenge I think I would have with that, because obviously with there being a national teacher shortage, every county can use some help, right? With that, is that would require the creation of an office or positions at the state level. It's not like there's state people sitting around like, well, we need something else, right? And so, which gets back to the fiscal impact of it. So I would caution us against that. Not the idea behind how do we get recruiting help as a whole, but the how do we pay for that, right? Which kind of gets us back to that same piece. Trustee Rodriguez. Thank you, Trustee Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. I kind of got the piggyback off for Trustee Smith and Church. First, when I hear about this, first thing I think is safety and security of our schools, especially given the current nationwide climate. So I think we've been pretty pro law enforcement, and something I do look at is the average ratio law enforcement to population. It's 2.4 to about 1,000. I look at our student population. I would love to see some growth there, but I definitely know that's going to come with a fiscal note. And kind of going off with Trustee Church, I've been saying this for a little bit of a while. I think it'd be interesting to see, I don't know if that will come on this BDR, but seeing the ballot initiative change or put that to the voters to amend WC1 to we can use that for salaries, things like that, which I think would help our recruiting and retention if we're able to have a little more control on that. So I would like to explore that. But again, that's something that's going to probably be down the line. With the BDRs, I mean, why don't we look to our associations to see what might make their lives a little bit easier that doesn't have a fiscal note? I think it might be a suggestion for all of us.
Okay.
Topic for discussion.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. Trustee Mayberry?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, it's good discussion, sort of along the lines of student safety, staff safety, and I've gotten some feedback from our teachers, and that's addressing some of these restorative discipline practices that the state has mandated. I think it's been more of an issue in Southern Nevada. I'm not prepared really to talk about the nuances. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but I do know that it takes a lot for some students who commit acts of violence to be suspended or removed from the school. So, for the record, it's important for me to get that on the record. And again, it may be a broader issue for legislators to address, but it's a problem. I mean, we've seen some terrible incidents in Southern Nevada where teachers have been just brutalized. So I'll put that on the table too.
Okay. Please go ahead, Superintendent.
So to the issue around safety and security, I just do want to share that that is a priority for the superintendents across the state too. And I think to speak to your point, Trustee Mayberry, they're really looking at maybe a little bit different than you, Trustee Rodriguez, looking at investing in safety measures that would provide additional counselors and mental health support for students. You can't have restorative practices if you don't have the people to engage students in that. Yes, you need the law enforcement for the violent incidents, hands down, but you need other staff. And so obviously there would be a fiscal note to that. But I do think when I think building on what Trustee Rodriguez said as well, when you asked about what would our associations and our staff look to, I've been very clear talking about that obviously competitive wages is critical. We want to pay a competitive salary for our staff, but working conditions matter too. And I can tell you, I think I can speak for our teachers who would welcome more staff in the building to assist with students who are struggling in meaningful ways. I know that would get traction. Don't know what the funding would look like for it, but that is a priority for the superintendents as well.
Yeah, and And I'll just
Please.
add, too, I mean, I would hope that the next session, really, it would be the education session where we do find, I think we're all in agreement that we need to do more to increase pay and retention for our teachers. We need to fix that formula for sure. So I'm behind that 100%.
Well, I would please, Trustee Rodriguez. Thank you, Trustee Mayberry, Madam Superintendent. Trustee Rodriguez.
And I don't know if this is the right place. Thank you, Madam President. There too, changing a funding formula could really, and then this is probably be a fiscal note, I imagine, but could this be a BDR to look at funding education first? That might be a dream. Don't know.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez.
Might be a little bit fiscal.
That might have a small, fiscal note that might get attention. It might. Clerk Minetto.
Thank you, Madam President, and I really, really, really wish we could do that. It would make sense to me to do that. I think if we can, we need to find unfunded mandates like the SLO, because that really blessed the teachers. I did lots of SLOs, and it was a lot of time consumption it was wasted time. And I don't know if I should say that out loud, but I did.
It's okay.
And if we have unfunded mandates, I think it's more likely to fly, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Smith?
Thank you. This has been a great conversation. I'm very intrigued by what Superintendent Enfield brought up about modernizing the educational statutes so that there's less rigidity. But I very much like the ideas that Trustee Rodriguez, Mayberry, and Minetto were bringing up about talking to our staff. I mean, I have heard from so many teachers, our associations and our teachers and staff in general, that there are a lot of layers and paperwork that is just viewed as bureaucracy with unintended consequences. So these rules, I'm sure, were passed with the absolute best of intent. And then you put something into effect, and then you see the consequences of it, often unintended. So I could not define those right now in this conversation, but I do wonder if we could open up that dialogue with our associations, with our staff, along the lines of the SLOs to see what opportunities are there, although I am very interested in what Superintendent Enfield brought up as well, too. But I like where this is going.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Enfield, and then thank you, JJ, being the crackpot investigator as she is, reminded me of the last few BDR requests that we put forth and what happened with them. So please go ahead, and then I'll share that.
Thank you. I love the idea of getting more input. I just want to remind people we're on a very tight timeline, that this is due on August 31st. So, and school is starting Monday, so I think staff is a little preoccupied right now with getting ready. So I just want to manage expectations on the amount of outreach. Now, I will say we will be able to do this better next year because I'll have done it once. We'll also have some I've done it once prior. Yeah. I'll be on my second round. But as we know, Lindsay departed, so we didn't have the benefit of Lindsay to help us on this as well. So I apologize that we're a little bit behind the eight ball on this, and the time might not allow for the kind of engagement. But I still think we can pull something meaningful together once I get direction from the trustees this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Dr. Nicolette, then I'll share this information.
I agree. This is wonderful dialogue, and it was exactly what I was hoping for. And I do think that so many of these ideas, whichever direction we go with the BDR, let's not lose these ideas because we have strategic planning on the horizon, and it will be, I think, an excellent time to really beat some of these up and get staff and community input.
That's a good point, too, Dr. Nicolette. I will then let me share some information from JJ. Thank you. 2 years ago, I had forgotten about this, so thank you. We did not submit a BDR for 4 years ago. 22. Oh, for that session, we did not submit. Yes, right. Last time was SLO. Thank you. We did not submit a BDR, similar to the conversation that we're having now, and some of those making sure there's something that's meaningful and so on. I'm going to pause because I always like to hear from the students. So, yes.
Well, thank you so much, President Taylor. From a student perspective, I would say one of the biggest concerns that we see throughout our schools, and I was talking about it with my principal and a few of our staff members a few weeks ago, is school safety. And even in I attend Incline High School, and we're a very small school and a very well-funded school, and you think we're very safe, but I opened up to them and told them that even in my own school, I don't feel safe. I don't think there's a lot of precautions taken, and all around, just around my fellow students, I don't feel safe because we also have a lack of mental health resources all around. So with that, I would say something geared towards school safety, especially prevention against school shootings, I think would best serve the students, because I think that's something we all fear in the back of our minds. And it takes away from our learning. I told them as well, I was like, it takes away from learning time, because there's a lot of times where students are thinking about that in the back of their head, or what if this were to happen right now? What would I do? What would I do? So there's a lot of fear surrounding that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and I remember I had brought it up at a board meeting last year, I don't know if it would work for this legislative session, but is the impacts around like civic education and providing that for the entire state, and the importance of that and incorporating, it could incorporate some of those competency-based skills Dr. Enfield was talking about, along with critical thinking skills and 21st century thinking skills. And all around, I know many of you know that our state is renowned for the We the People program and how well we excel at that, especially with Reno High School and Incline High School and Reed High School. So I think something geared towards that and preparing our Nevada students to be engaged citizens in the future will solve a lot of our current problems. May take a longer time, but as long as they have that education going forward, I think that would solve a lot of our problems.
Thank you very much. Wonderful input. I want to share this, and I think part of Trustee Mayberry brought this forward as an agenda item request on the safety, on student safety, and as you all recall, there was some money put forth federally to help schools with the areas of student safety in particular. Some of it was mental health, some of it was safety and security from a shooting standpoint, and so on. So there will be some funding. We don't know much about it yet, and I think that's part of which your agenda item request came from. We don't know much about it yet, but there will be some of that coming down the pike. So we'll need to learn a little bit more about that. So some of those things should already be in the works. Once what happens here, then it trickles. Same thing. Something happens at the state. It's passed, and then 6 months from now we figure out how to do it, in the district. So some of that should already be happening. I don't know exactly specifically enough yet, but I do know that federally, with the shootings that we know we recently saw, unfortunately, especially in Texas, there was some movement that happened right away, if you recall. So some of those things should be working. So we aren't the only ones talking about that, and that which is a good thing. Right. Let me finish with the history, with the background, unless you wanted to jump right in on something she said, Trustee Mayberry?
No, please.
Before I switch up? Okay, I just want to give the rest of the background. I also see you over there, Trustee Church. Let's see, 2 years before then, I remember this, it was the removal, there's previously under the Nevada plan, special education student, there was additional funding was available for special education students across the state in every district, but there was a cap on it. Couldn't be more than 13% of your enrollment in terms of those additional dollars. That's what you mentioned earlier, Dr. Diane. I think that was one of the times when you were here. But it couldn't the percentage of your population that was deemed and certified as special education needing SPED services could not be greater than 13% of your student enrollment. Did I say that clearly enough? Should I say it again? Okay. Say it again? Let me say it again. Okay, student enrollment, say 62,000, based upon the way the funding occurred under the Nevada plan. Right, not the pupil-centered funding programs plan, which we're under now, but under the Nevada plan. This was back in for the 2017 session, so it would have been the 2016 meetings. But you did not get that additional funding for special ed for more than the 13% of your population. So even if at that point, I think for us, we had 15 or 16% of our enrolled students who were certified and qualified for special ed supports. But the state only provided additional resources for 13%. So as a district, we would make up the extra. Does that make sense? And so our BDR at that point was, can you not limit that? Because it's not the student's fault if there are, one student over that 13%. We still provide those services, and that comes from a district's general funds, and so on. And so that was the one that it actually did get some legs. But I don't remember exactly where it landed. We didn't get all that we wanted, but it did get some legs. But now with the new with the pupil-centered funding formula, that's all built in. There's a certain amount of money, and it's not that limit. So that gives us an example. Something like special ed impacts all of us, right? All students in the state, all districts. Something like student learning outcomes impacts everybody. So it was that type of thing. None of those per se. Now, granted, moving the number from 13% up a little bit further had a fiscal impact. Wasn't a huge number, but it had more to what's the message that we're sending, from how do we support our SPED students, our special ed students. So from a background standpoint, that helps. Thank you, JJ. Trustee Mayberry, then over to Trustee Church.
Just a comment. I wonder what it may be helpful. It may not be to have to hear what and I know we're under crunch time for time. I appreciate that, but the Nevada Association of School Boards, did I say that correctly? I wonder what they're advocating for. If they have a plan of attack that may help this body.
We haven't typically. Now again, Trustee Church just stepped into the role that I played on that board, and I know Ellen's there. So we haven't, as the NASB, the Nevada Association of School Boards, hasn't typically had hey, here is our platform, so to speak. But we followed all of the items that had to do with school districts and support for students and so on. Kind of work together with NAS in terms of the lobbyists that would advocate on our behalf and so on. But haven't had our own separate, hey, what are those 3 or 4 things that we are saying that we don't get a bill draft or anything like that. So, Trustee Church?
Thank you. Yeah, this is tough. And again, we don't know what the other BDRs are going to be from other agencies. Boy, I'm just at a real loss here. The one thing I want to point out, just today we approved $1.7 million for mental health for social workers. We've spent a boatload of money. I want to make it really clear. I'm proud of the school district that we've addressed this. We have counselors, we have psychiatrists, we have, by whatever title you want, we've spent a lot of money on mental health and emotional support for the students and the staff. At the same time, we've got the WC1 money for the physical improvements that we've done, the 1 point of entry, I won't even go into detail, I won't even discuss it, but we spent the money. So I don't, as important as that is, I want to emphasize that we've done that. So I don't think that's money well spent for a BDR. And again, if WC1 has any legs, great. Again, maybe asking for the allocation of funds to be reevaluated as a BDR that wouldn't necessarily have a fiscal cost. It has to be able to, like you mentioned, it has to be able to pass. It has to have some legs. And so I don't know if Clark County, being the big elephant in the room, if they fall in the top or the bottom. I haven't looked that up, where we would get support from Clark County for that. But that would be one thing I'd ask. The only other thing I can think of, because time is short, the last thing, I don't want to submit no BDR. I don't want to do what we did 4 years ago. Would it be a matter of maybe authorizing the superintendent to move ahead with one? I mean, I don't know. The last thing I want to do is have none. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
No, I hear that. I would say, actually, the last thing I want to do is have something that we know is dead on arrival. Quite honest, is to have a bad one. Not one because if it doesn't go our way, that's fine, but one that we haven't, vetted to the extent that we can. But I would just from one trustee, and maybe because I was here when WC1 passed, I wouldn't want to go and ask to use WC1 differently without the support of the community. Quite honestly, I think that we made that commitment to them that this is what this money is for, and to ask to do something. And certainly we have these real needs, Trustee Church. There's no question about that. Real needs. Paying teachers more, reduced class sizes, certainly safety. Real needs that I believe our community certainly cares about. But I as one trustee, who was part of the ones who said, we give you our word, I wouldn't want to go back on that word without the community saying, okay, yeah, we great, let's go back and ask for some other things. That's one trustee, maybe because I was the only one here who promised, so to speak, but that's important to me. And you were here during that time too, Dr. Nichol. I just think it's important that we as a board, we're so good at hey, we've kept our word on this because it was such a question, right? I think it's important that we as a board continue to do that. Superintendent?
I think that's good counsel, President. Thank you, Madam President. In response to Trustee Church's sort of proposal, ask of the fellow trustees, I've heard some galvanization around two main themes, including from Ivy. One around sort of safety and security and mental health supports, and the other around something perhaps around unfunded mandates. Would the trustees like to consider to ask me to maybe try to pull together the two drafts, and whichever resonates with the trustees could be the one that we submit so that you have some options?
Well, certainly, and I think if we take a look and go a little broader into a bill that says no unfunded mandates, I'm not sure what we get from that, so to speak, right? Because the legislature is still going to do what they want to do, because we know that's just right. Nothing disrespectful to anybody, but that's
around
the way
modernizing
it is,
statutes,
right? But I think more about modernizing the statutes and updating them. What that does is that allows that to be kind of snuck in, if you will. But it also says, let's look at those things that might be in the way of competency-based learning, which is one of the things that Trustee Ivy mentioned, and expanding our career and technical and work-based learning programs. Is any of those things in our statute that may be barriers to those things? Or that we could, if you do a little tweak here, a little tweak there, it can really open it up and allow us to provide, better educational opportunities for students. It can be kind of dwarfed in, or embedded in, if you will, not dwarfed, but it doesn't just stand out as the. I think the unfunded mandate part is I think that's real, but if it's a part of maybe the broader. That's just my piece. And on the safety piece, I would want to find out what does that federal legislation do? Because if it's going to give us some money to do some things with, we don't need to use our BDR on it, right? If there's another source that's already been approved and already coming down the pike, eventually, right? Then that's something great. We know there are some things that are happening. We can, along with those things that we've already done, as Trustee Church mentioned a few of them. Great. We can maybe focus elsewhere. That's my 2 cents on that piece. So I think Trustee Smith was next, and I'll jump over here to my right.
Thank you, President Taylor. I agree with that. As much as I would like to have something that has a dollar sign associated to it, we just can't do that because that is unlikely to go forward. So obviously, like I said, I would love to focus on school safety. Glad to hear that there's some federal funding, but the options that I would like to see are ones that don't have dollar signs. So I am interested in the modernizing the educational statutes, and then also looking at any of the other legislation that's creating those unintended consequences, that's creating more paperwork rather than the value of the work. So following along those lines, and then seeing what the superintendent comes back with.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Go this way. I'll just go to Dr. Nicolette and then Trustee Mayberry.
Here's what I'm thinking, given the October 31st / September 1st deadline. When we talk about safety, having served on the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission for so many years, we had these conversations all the time because it was very important, all the way from door numbering to employee training, and you can imagine the gamut, social workers, more police. We had those discussions, and it always did come down to our ability, money, time, and resources to be able to do those things. And I have to say this, that in those years of service, our police department, Washoe County Schools Police Department, and our emergency management department were absolutely stellar in guiding us and providing resources and taking us from a very large school district that had people that cared but really were not trained and were not mindful about safety and all those things that surround safety, and took this school district from where we were to being nationally recognized. I cannot not say that because it's so very important, all the work that has gone before us. Having said that, you can always do more for safety. Quite frankly, I'm not so sure that that's how I want us to comprise a BDR, because I think we should be doing that anyway. It should be a 24/7 all the time. What I would like to to ask our superintendent and other leaders to do is to have this conversation with our police department and with emergency management, because if safety does rise to the top, I want them to inform us. You know, we can talk about the need for dogs and more police officers and the wide variety of social workers, et cetera, restorative practices, but I think we need to have more information. And like we've all agreed, we don't have a lot of time. I struggle with the modernization of statutes just because that, to me, is like a behemoth. And I don't have enough knowledge around exactly what those statutes are. I would request a list from the Nevada Association of Superintendents. When they talk about these modernization of statutes, I'd like to know specifically what they have identified that is negatively impacting our employees to be able to do the kind of work that they know they need to do, because it's an albatross, and we know that's out there. So that would be my request, is a little more information about what our police and what our counselors would like us to do around safety, and then the modernization of statutes. I really don't know what that means. Unfunded mandates. How many unfunded mandates do we have? I know we have them, but I don't know how many there are. Maybe some of them are okay. So I need more information. And again, I know we're on a time crunch, but right now this is the work that we have to do.
Thank you, Vice President Nicolette. Trustee Mayberry?
I think just a couple final comments for me, and then with the question, and thank you, President Taylor. You know, safety and security are hot button items. I mean, I hear that from mom and dads all the time, all the time. What does that look like? To Trustee Rodriguez's comment, you know, we know there's at least perception that discipline can be lacking. That can be problematic. So you know, it's just sort of throwing things out to stick, and clearly, you know, teacher compensation and reducing some of the burdens in the classrooms are extremely important. Again, something I hear all the time. So I like I would support the approach that you're taking, Superintendent Enfield. And then second is, how do we administer, how do we attack the legislative session with Lindsay gone? Do you have a plan of attack for that?
Is that in the scope of it's going a little bit too far, so that might be a conversation in your meeting with her. Okay, thank you. Okay, why don't we do this? Let's take a pause. We're starting to shape up a little bit, and let's see if we have any public comment on this. None on this. So thank you, JJ. What it looks like we have kind of some direction, if you will, for the superintendent. I'm sure your preference is to have a motion to that regard.
Yes, it would need to be a motion in that regard.
Okay, so what we're looking for, thank you, Council. What we're looking for then is a motion asking the superintendent to take the conversation that we've had here and follow up and bring back more information regarding two areas in particular: the modernizing statutes, which can include unfunded mandates. Could we know time's going to be limited, and so you won't be able to do everything, right? Additionally, to information on if we were to use our BDR on safety, what that might look like, which should include what are we expecting from the federal level, so it makes sense. Whatever it is that we do can make sense based upon what we know is eventually going to come our way. So looking for a motion to that effect, to give that direction to the superintendent, and then we'll take action. We'll make a final decision on our BDR at our next meeting. Yes, done. Let's look at JJ and see, can she do a so move? Yes. She's amazing. Let's get a second, and we'll get hang on, let me get a second first, and then we'll get discussion, okay? Second, Trustee Rodriguez, make sure she gets that. Okay, Trustee Church, discussion.
I want to hear what I'm voting on, so.
Okay, we can get a redo on that.
That the Board of Trustees directs the superintendent to research the modernization of statutes, including unfunded mandates and possible safety topics, to include recent federal legislation as a possible BDR topic.
Mm-hmm. Does that give you the shape that we?
Do we need to say to be brought back at a date, or?
Oh, well, it has to be done by September 1st, so, yeah, so we can.
Bring it back to you for action.
Yes, bring it back to us at the next meeting. I mean, that can be a part of, if you're okay with that as a friendly, to be considered at the next board meeting. Okay? Has to be, because that's our deadline, so. Okay? Further discussion, questions on this, anyone? JJ, thank you for capturing that. All right, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Opposition? All right, the motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion. And thank you for the student perspective on that, because that's, at the end of the day, that is why we are here. Okay, on to items for presentation, discussion, information, and so on. Agenda item 4.01, presentation and discussion on the entry plan for Dr. Susan Enfield, Superintendent of Schools for the Washoe County School District. This is simply presentation and discussion. We will turn it over to you, Dr. Enfield. Your first presentation at a board meeting.
No pressure. And I have to model for staff how to do it in 5 minutes. So here we go. So first of all, thank you, Madam President. And I know it might seem a little odd, Trustee Church pointed this out, to talk about an entry plan when I've entered. I've been here 6 weeks. But this is standard practice for a superintendent, to come in and let the trustees and the community and students and staff know what they can expect in the initial months. And what this will do is it will allow me to gather information that I will then report back to the trustees and community around what I've learned and what my thoughts are for us moving forward. So I have a little PowerPoint for you to just give you some of the highlights, because you didn't have to read the whole thing. And I will say that you have the content, but thanks to Michelle and our wonderful comms team, there's a beautiful document that's been designed that is being finalized, translated right now, so it will be public very, very soon. So in talking with people over the last several weeks, I've really identified 3 priorities that are going to guide my initial months on the job. The first is getting back to basics. All students are known, challenged, and supported to succeed. The second is building trust, strong relationships with families and community, and finally creating a healthy, supportive, and resilient school system where all staff are valued, engaged, and successful. So everything that I'm doing will try to fall within these 3 priorities, and they'll guide how I prioritize my time. As I sort of alluded to at my introduction, the purpose of this entry plan is really to gather information, begin building those relationships, and for me to really learn what our district's strengths, assets, and challenges are, and inform the strategies that we will undertake moving forward. And then finally, really expand our network of contacts and resources within the community to support this work. The school system can't do this work alone. Educating our children, yes, it's our job, it's our priority, but it's a community effort. So building that network will be critical in these early days. I've broken up the plan into 3 phases. We are in phase 1. Phase 1 will go from August through October, listening, learning, and building relationships. A lot of these entry plans just talk about listening and learning. I think that rightfully so, people in the community will say, that's what she's getting paid for. So I really want to say that I'm out there building relationships as well, which I think is critically important for the success of our system. That will go through October. In phase 2, from October through December, I'm really going to be able to analyze the information that I've gathered and begin collaborating with staff on potential action steps based on that. And then finally, phase 3, it's a long phase, will be from December through June, where we will be engaging staff and community in a very broad strategic planning process, which I'm very excited about, with the goal being that we bring a draft of a strategic plan forward to the trustees in June for adoption, and that will then guide our work moving forward into next year. And I'm very, very excited for that. So here are the deliverables that I want the board and community to understand. Obviously, check 1, done. So that's good. I'm off to a good start. The second one will be an update in October. I don't want to just wait until I have the findings to give to you. I want you to see what I've learned along the way and report out some steps we'll be taking. And then finally in December, a comprehensive summary report to you and the community at our December 13th board meeting, which will lay out everything learned and very specific action steps for us going into the 2023 calendar year. Yikes. Furthermore, I will provide, and you will see this in the plan, a full schedule of opportunities, what people can expect to see from me, hear from me, how they can do that. We're going to, as I said, begin the development of the strategic plan. And then while you will have a report in December, we will have the State of Education address in January, February, and clearly this will be the anchor of that State of Education address. So phase 1, engagement opportunities for staff, school visits, soup with the soup. Yes, it actually involves soup, where I'll go out and just sit in schools and meet with staff and hear what's going on. Soup sessions, it's where I'll be meeting with our building leaders to hear what's going on. Lunch and Learn is my opportunity to engage with central office staff to learn what their needs and hopes are. Obviously, I'm meeting regularly with my leadership team and our employee association groups, but these are just going to be part of my standard practice, not limited to the entry plan, but I wanted to share them here so that people could know what to expect. More engagement opportunities. I'm going to have community coffee chats. We're scheduling those now out in schools. Student Advisory Council, which I'm very excited on. Ivy, I believe you sit on that, yes? Excellent. So meeting with our students and scheduling some town hall meetings with trustees so that we can go out as a team, the two of us or three of us, and hear from our community what they are looking for. Finally, connecting with community leaders and organizations. This is clearly not an exhaustive list. As you all know, there are a lot of people in the community to meet. And I think you can imagine what my right hand, Tammy Covington, is dealing with in scheduling right now. So I'm being very clear in managing expectations with folks in the community. We are scheduling things as quickly as possible. But there are a lot of requests. But I also welcome and would ask for assistance from my trustees in specific ideas for groups and community members. Many of you have already offered those, and I'm grateful for that. Keep them coming, and we will make sure that they get included. And then finally, I'm going to have to do a deep dive into our data, our budget data, our grants data, our student data, our processes and systems, all of that. And I'll be doing that in conjunction with my executive leadership team, who have already been incredibly helpful in getting me up to speed because I'm on a pretty steep learning curve and there's not time to waste. So that will continue in phase 2. And then, as I said, I won't read through this. I said this already. In phase 3, we'll be reporting out what we've learned, but also next steps, and that I'm hoping will inform a really robust strategic planning process, because what I've learned in strategic planning, the process matters even more than the plan. How we engage our staff, our students, and our community members in those conversations so they see their priorities and their values reflected in that plan is critically important for success. And so that is what you will be hearing about in the months ahead. I have been very, very clear about this whenever I have the opportunity. We have challenges. We have work to do. I get that. And this is a district on the rise, and the best is yet to come. And I will sing that from the rafters every chance I get, because I am so impressed with the team that I have joined, with the students that I have met, with the community members who have been so generous with their ideas and their time to help me learn. If any school district can do this, we can, and we will. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Enfield. This is information and discussion, so there's no public comment, but certainly any comments from the trustees. Trustee Smith?
Thank you, President Taylor. So one thing that you said that I do want to emphasize is I think paying you to listen, learn, and build relationships is actually really important. Coming in and just acting or coming in into like a savior mode is not what we need. So I actually fully support the listening and the learning. Obviously, we recognize you're working very hard in tandem with that, but I fully support the listening and the learning and the building relationships.
Thank you very much, Trustee Smith. Trustee Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President. I just kind of want to piggyback off that. I know the 6 weeks you've been here, Dr. Enfield, hit the ground running for sure. And I just really appreciate the second slide, getting back to basics and building trust. That's definitely the direction I believe this board is trying to go, and I just want to thank you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. I will add, seeing no other lights at this point, I will add that I have really appreciated your willingness to, I'm going to meet with people who want to meet, I want to listen, I want to learn, and find ways to build relationships. I mean, one of the advantages we have in hiring someone who was a superintendent before, right, is someone who comes in and just understands how you find that balance with all of the everything and the and just your willingness to just be open and say, yeah, meet. It might take me a minute to get to everybody, right, or two, right, but just your willingness to say, hey, I'm gonna meet with them. They've reached out. I can't do it for a while, but just your openness and willingness, because I really do think that we've lost some of that over this past year or so. Couple of years we have COVID has contributed, and so on, and more, quite frankly, and so really an emphasis on how do we pull that back together, balancing that with the staff feeling supported, which was also a big part of what you said. The culture of the organization, really meaningful. So thank you for that. Trustee Church.
Thank you. I want to make clear that the superintendent has my full support, 100%. And I love the idea of getting back to basics. I waited anxiously for this, and part of me wanted to see something specific, and that's the wrong approach for a superintendent to come in and go, this is what I'm going to do. The right approach is to build consensus with staff, community, et cetera, and it's only 4 or 5 months away for this final report. So, yeah, the superintendent has my full support. Obviously, there's day-to-day things that are still going to be done. We've had wonderful conversations one-on-one about quality of education and everything that goes with it. So I just want to make clear to what commonly we joke about my people, that the superintendent has my full support for success. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Church. Dr. Nicolette?
I will say ditto to that, Trustee Church, absolutely. I do have a few clarifications that I know are going to be very easy for you to answer. Imagine you're surprised that I want some term info. So on the 3 priorities in the very beginning, getting back to the basics, just your overall 30,000-foot view, what are the basics?
When I speak with community members, parents, family members, and this isn't, I think, unique to Washoe County. I think this is across the country. Parents, families, community members want to know that we are keeping our core mission at the forefront of what we're doing, and that's educating our children. It's making sure that they are graduating from our system, being able to read, write, be computational thinkers, do mathematics, be critical thinkers, be collaborators, that we are graduating young people with the skills prepared to thrive in our workforce, our local community, and beyond. So keeping our focus on education, I think, is something that I've heard as a theme from people that I want us to make sure we are focusing on as a system.
Thank you. And second one, because it's a big word, trust. How do you, as Superintendent Enfield, know, not agreement, but how do you know when people in a community trust you? What are you going to look for?
That's a great. Vice President Nicolette always asks the really thought-provoking questions. No, I appreciate that. Well, I believe that trust is essential, and trust doesn't come about through magic beans and pixie dust or because we wish it so. Trust comes about through building relationships, which takes time, takes commitment, takes honesty, takes self-reflection. And so what I want to do is build relationships within the community. And this is less about people trusting me, but people trusting us. I want Washoe County School District to be seen as a trusted organization by our students, our families, our community members, that we mean what we say what we mean, that we are clear, and this will come out in our strategic planning, what are our core values that we are going to live by that are going to guide the work that we do. And that, and I said this in the conclusion of my plan, I think my sharing out progress on a regular basis is critically important. Owning our mistakes when we make them is critically important, and doing that publicly and making it right. I don't think that the public expects us to be perfect, but they certainly expect us to own our mistakes and say, here's what we learned and here's how we're going to work to not let it happen again. And finally, to celebrate the successes. Those 3 things, I believe, will build trust along the way. And of course, we'll seek community feedback, and the community will give us their feedback. And we can do formal things and surveys and others about what people think of the district, and we will. But I really think it will be, honestly, some of it's going to be anecdotal data. It's what you hear at the grocery store. It's what you're hearing when you pick your son up from school, right? What are you hearing? Because you are the eyes and ears. You are the representatives of our greater community. And I look to you to tell me, what are those things? This includes you, Ivy. What are those things that I really need to know that may not know? And I think that's how we're going to build it and how we'll know that it is building.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a party. I'm on board. Let's do this.
You're all in, huh? Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Vice President Nicolette. Trustee Mayberry.
Well, thank you. My question won't be as hard as hers. But just a comment, really, and then a question probably would be better for President Taylor. But thank you. I'm delighted that Superintendent Enfield is here. I've Really appreciate some of the efficiencies that you've already brought, particularly on the presentation side. This was a very short, succinct presentation. I think all of us can appreciate that. And then this is, just for clarification, there's been some chatter in the community. So President Taylor, can you just help crystallize again the performance measurements? And I know we set some goals for the new superintendent going forward, but how does that play into her one-year evaluation?
Actually, no. Thank you. That's a really good question. As the board may recall, when we went through the strategic goals for the 2-year. Remember, we had the 2-year recovery. So those have already been established. We did that together in the work session. So those don't change because the superintendent is evaluated on the goals based upon what we as a board have established in that 2-year. That was our 2-year strategic plan, our plan for recovery. That's already been established. What we did agree upon when we negotiated the contract, as you may recall, with Council Hall, is that how that looks and what that looks like we do together. As you may recall, I don't know if you were here yet, Trustee Mayberry, but we did that with Superintendent McNeil. And said we had a work session and we sat and talked about here are those things that we're going to be measuring and so on. We adjusted some of those measurements as we had those reports, as you remember how we get those reports. So that process is there. Now we realize with the new superintendent and with the new strategic plan, that might look very different moving forward after this year. Right after this year, but we've always had the philosophy, at least I know since I've been on the board, that the evaluation process should be something done with her, not to her. And so that's why it's important for her to be a part of that conversation. So that will be, I actually just made a note today, we got to make sure and schedule the work session so we can get that firmed up. Because we were here, but she wasn't. All right, and then talk about that. And then she gets to weigh in on what does that look like, and if there are other things that need to be adjusted based upon data and those types of things. But it's going to be based upon those goals that were already set. Some of this may show up, though, because now we have a plan. And that's when she gets a chance to throw in and say, hey, let's pull in some of those things as well. So I hope that answers that. It's not we don't start from scratch because we're starting a new year now, so it'd be a little late to say this is what you got to do.
And this year's fiscal year?
Academic year, fiscal year, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So that's what we've done. Yes, Dr. Enfield.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Trustee Mayberry. Yes, I again, having done this before, but everyone does it differently. I want to understand from the trustees the process that you would like to use to have those conversations. Clearly, obviously it's student performance, it's retention and support of staff. I mean, I think I know the big buckets, and then my understanding, just for clarification, is that we would have a work session where we would discuss this in public, and then I would be, I think, directed to work with staff to identify specific targets, because I want ambitious, but I want achievable, right? We're not going to go from 45% to 80% in 1 year.
in anything.
Exactly.
Right, and that usually happens. The targets are usually developed or established in that work session based upon data, based upon where we are, trends, and so on. So again, we do that together. Okay? All right, that's a very good question. I do think it's important to establish that as well. And you should be a part of that process. God bless you. Anything else on the entry plan or the, I guess, already in plan? I don't know what you would call it, Trustee Church, since she's already in, but okay, great. Well, thank you very much. This is exciting. It's a good overview. And it certainly is wisdom tonight. I'm going to do specifically this or this. You've been here 10 minutes, right?
15.
Okay, 15 minutes, but it's good to see that and people can see what's on your mind.
Thank you, right. Madam President. And I just want to thank again Michelle Anderson and Megan and our comms team. I have lots of opinions, and I was an English major and an English teacher, so you can imagine the wordsmithing could go on endlessly. And they were very patient and have produced what I think is a really solid document. So I just want to publicly acknowledge them. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your work, comms team. And we look forward to the document. Make it pretty. It is. Oh, the preview. It looks pretty. All right, so why don't we go ahead to our Chief HR Officer will be getting in position, and I think Laura Thurston, is Laura here? Yep. All right, oh yeah, you're behind the podium. See, I can just see the top of your head. All right, discussion and possible action to affirm the recommendation of the Group Insurance Committee for a group health insurance rate increase of 0% for the that's not a typo, 0% for the 2023 plan year. Who am I turning over to? Ms. Ellison?
I will start us,
Okay.
and I will say Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer, and that is not a typo. It is 0%, and I know you hear from me a lot, and so I brought my friend Laura, who's the expert in this space, and she's here to share the good news.
All right.
Yes, Laura Thurston, Risk Coordinator, for the record. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees and Dr. Susan Enfield. I will try to make this brief as well. You held a good example there, so let's see. Let's see if this works.
Pressure's on.
Yeah. As probably most of you know, the district's health insurance fund is self-funded, and our ASO provider, our administrative services only provider, has been Anthem Blue Cross since January 1st of 2020. During the first part of that pandemic, the health insurance fund saw a decrease in claims expenses with a resultant increase in fund net position for both fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. Fiscal year 22 claims experience has resulted in claims expenses closer to and slightly higher than pre-pandemic levels, largely in part to higher utilization due to members seeking services that they initially put off in the early part of the pandemic. This trend is something that's currently being seen across the nation. The net position of the insurance fund has continued to stay healthy during this period. A rate analysis of the program's medical and dental plans was completed recently to determine the potential 2023 health insurance premium rates, and an increase of 6.79% was forecasted based off a current claims trend. Given the current health and stability of the health insurance fund, along with the current inflation of goods and services and other financial pressures that employees are currently facing, the Group Health Insurance Committee is recommending a 0% rate increase to the health insurance premiums for 2023. The recommendation is also supported by our Chief Financial Officer, Mark Mathers, and the Business Office. The exciting news, besides 0%, is this will be the third year in the row that the district has supported a 0% rate increase. This is rather unprecedented, and we are really proud to be able to support our employees, retirees, and their dependents in this manner. Our plan is to continue affordable and comprehensive benefits for insured members, and we are advocating strong member education around how our members can help support a sufficient and healthy self-insured health insurance fund into the future. Also with that, we brought along a sample flyer that we are distributing, and we'll give you an example of the messaging that we're starting to send out to our members here and how they can help control costs, but also keep our health insurance premiums down and maybe keep them from increasing in the future. Thank you.
Fantastic. As we receive this, we'll go ahead and get some comments from the board. Look, I'm looking. JJ, is there any public comment? JJ. No, there is not. Okay, thank you. Still ready. Thank you very much. Trustee Minetto.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm always so thrilled when 0% is there. Thank you. That's yay.
No, that's fantastic, especially during the time when we know so many other costs are going up. For families to know that, employees to know that they can still keep the same coverage for their families without increasing. So that's fantastic. Dr. Nicolette?
I just want to throw in that I was in attendance at the Group Health Insurance Committee meeting when they had this discussion. And I will say that it's out of my scope of expertise, but I understand zero, and I understand the compassion and the research that they had conducted and threw into the mix of their conversation. And I will say it was very impressive, and it was very reassuring, because I felt that this Group Health Insurance Committee knows their stuff. And zero at first it's great, and then as a fiscal manager, I think, well, what does that do to the budget? How you think of all these things, and hearing their conversation, I was totally comfortable with their expert decision. Just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, Vice President Nicolette. If it is the pleasure of the board, then certainly looking for a motion that the board affirms the recommendation of the Insurance Committee for a 0% increase for the third year in a row.
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Nicolette. I see a nod from
Second.
Trustee Mayberry. There's a second over there. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? The motion carries. Let the record show it is unanimous. And again, thank you, and please give our thanks to the committee for their hard work. We know this fund has to be self-supporting, so it's a lot of hard work. And thank you for these. Let's keep them down. You got 0. Let's keep them down, everybody. Let's keep them down. So we can encourage staff to participate in that as well. Okay, I see that Ms. Ellison is right here, because we're on to 4.03, presentation and discussion regarding certified staffing levels. Can you not see her? You know what? Why don't we take a quick break? Take a quick 10-minute break. I know because we have as board members start trickling out, that means it's time for a little break. So let's take a little 10-minute break and then come on back. Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Ellison, you're still here. Very good. Okay. Okay, we're going to go back to agenda item 4.03 once again. Presentation and discussion regarding certified staffing levels and vacancies for the 2022-23 school year. We're getting close. We start less than a week from now, and this is, again, just for presentation and discussion, but it's good to check in and see what are our certified levels and so on. And we know the superintendent made some decisions and made some shifting to help with that in the classroom, and I'm sure Ms. Ellison's going to talk about that as well. And we'll give you an opportunity as well, Madam Superintendent. Please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer for the record. We did commit last time to providing an update on our certified vacancies as school is ready to start on Monday. And Dr. Taylor, you alluded to a decision that we recently made to deploy our teachers on special assignment, or our TOSAs, to the classroom. And so I'd like to just provide a little bit of context on vacancies in general. The total number of vacancies this year and last year is somewhat inflated by ESSER's positions and vacancies that were created through ESSER's funding. However, I've been monitoring I'm going to call them our standard vacancies, if you will, and we've been tracking pretty consistently with previous school years up until the mid to late part of July. And that's when I became concerned, and we started to explore this really difficult decision of deploying TOSAs to the classroom. And so just to give some context for numbers, we had 146 positions open and 60 TOSAs that we are in the process of deploying, which leave us with 87 positions. And so myself, the Human Resources team, our area superintendents, we've been behind closed doors until the meeting started, and will be for the remainder of the week triaging those positions, talking about long-term subs, paid interns, potential retirees, whether or not there are uncertainties around enrollment, and perhaps class schedules should be modified. We're exploring options with our association around virtual instruction. So the number that we're working with at the moment is 87 after the placement of our teachers on special assignment. And again, we'll continue to triage those vacancies up to the start of school. We had, I want to say, 62 vacancies on the first day of last year. So always looking to get that number lower than the year before. And this is where we are at the moment.
If I may, Ms. Ellison, so what happens, let's say we get down to 50, whatever, right? No, let me back up. First of all, what's about average? Is that about 60-ish, 50-ish? What's about average?
Well, prior to the pandemic, we
Yes.
were trending very much in the right direction, and we had gotten under 20 vacancies on the first day.
Wow.
And then that first year of the pandemic, remember we had a special legislative session, and we ended up having to do an overage process much later. So we ended up having a bunch of positions come available right before the school year started. So we kind of spiked back up to around 60 the last couple of years, and we're currently sitting at 87.
Okay, so we're still, excuse me, higher than we were during the pandemic time, those 2 years.
Yes.
And then hopefully, so what happens? Let's say you triage as best you can. What do we do with those? Let's say we still have 25. I'm making this up. What do we do?
Well, it's all hands on deck, right? So we've got additional licensed staff who fill administrator positions. Our schools work really hard to identify additional long-term sub-coverage opportunities. There aren't any classrooms of children left unattended on the first day, right? So there will be a plan for each of those 87 positions unless there is uncertainty in enrollment. And then in that situation, the principal generally redistributes the students until enough enrollment comes in to justify the position, or the position is moved to another school where they have increased in enrollment. So, but there will be a plan for each of those positions where the enrollment is in place.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Smith?
Thank you. So I have some questions. Of the 60 TOSAs, it feels improbable that all of them will go back to the classroom. Realistically, I mean, how many of those 60 do we actually think, and for various reasons, but that would be like 100%. And there are various reasons why, either medical exemptions or, to be blunt, some staff are perhaps going to leave because of this. So what is a more reasonable number? I know that you're, not that it's very long, but you're 2.5 business days into this, so I don't expect you to know with definitiveness. I know you've been working around the clock on it, but what are we really looking out of that 60?
Answer that question. So we have had one employee opt to resign versus be transferred into another position, and I currently have 4 employees who have ADAA accommodation requests in process. Now, I believe that we will still be able to utilize those folks in some capacity based on the mix of positions that we have and some of the things that I shared, like virtual instruction. And so right now, I'm feeling pretty good about 58.
Okay.
That is, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. It probably goes without saying, but, you know, for anyone that does have an ADA accommodation, obviously they're protected, but I would never want anyone to feel like they're not really fulfilling the spirit of what we're trying to do, because, you know, people do have individual medical needs. My second question was, and I'm not an expert in this, but I do know that for certain types of roles, there is additional cost for licensing or certifications that may be different because of what we're looking to fill versus how they may have been educated or what they're certified in. Would any of these people be incurring any cost whatsoever out of pocket if they had to pay for additional licensure or certification or anything like that? And maybe I'm not asking the question. What I'm getting at is, would any of these TOSAs incur any out-of-pocket cost because of this change?
That's a great question, and I'm going to kind of address it in 2 parts. The first is, we're not making any change to anyone's contract status. So many of our teachers on special assignment have 195-day contracts, whereas a classroom teacher has 185 days. We are honoring and keeping those contracts intact, so no one will see a financial impact from that perspective. We're also working really, really hard to keep people in their area of expertise and licensure. And so if an individual is interested in, for example, pursuing special education through the options program, I don't currently have any scholarship money for them, but there's a lot of scholarship money out there. So my commitment to those individuals has been that we'll work with them and our college partners to identify those opportunities for any coursework that they need. The number of people that have been interested in that is about 3 so far, and so I feel very confident. And many of them have coursework that they already bring to the equation, so the licensing requirements are less.
I really appreciate that. I'm only, of course, one trustee, but I fully support that there should be no out-of-pocket costs, or for those TOSAs interested in using this as an opportunity through the options program. I think that's a great approach, because I very much support the idea that they would not have to pay to acquire any certifications during this time. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I think that's great questions, and it's great to hear that the contracts have not been impacted, because it is, you know, it isn't their fault, and we don't want them to have to roll back, and then that we're doing all you can, you're doing all you can so that we can cover expenses if there's some expenses that are involved for them having to get moved over unplanned. So thank you. Good questions. Please go ahead.
The only other thing I was going to add is that as a part of the agreement, well, let me back up. So this is taking place under the directed transfer process, which is already a part of the collective bargaining agreement. We have conceptual agreement between us and the WEA that we would like to also provide the impacted teachers with 2 additional contract days, knowing that they will be spending this weekend setting up their classrooms. Of course, it's something, right? It's not. They're probably going to spend evenings and weekends and all of that. But we want to acknowledge the timeline. And so all of the impacted employees will receive 2 additional days on top of the contract they hold right now.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. Thank you for your work in continuing to do that, to find places to keep teachers to the fullest extent that you can in their areas of expertise, because that will be a little unnerving as well, right? Going to a whole new area and having to jump in on that. Dr. Nicolette?
Thank you. Thank you for this information. So the directed transfer process, 2 additional days, can you clarify that for me? Is that going to go under the TOSA 195-day contract or the 185-day regular teacher contract?
Great question. So whatever the employee currently holds, we're going to add 2 days onto that.
Thank you, Dr. Nicolette. Trustee Mayberry?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your update. The question I have, Wayne, and you and I have had a few email correspondence about this. This has to do with teacher aides and assistants. We increased their compensation several weeks ago. Can you just clarify, though, what teacher aides / assistants are not eligible for that compensation?
You said why they are not eligible, or which ones are not eligible?
Yeah, can you repeat that question?
Right, I was trying to get some clarity. Yes, please.
Let's see. Staffing levels. Yeah, maybe it's not within the agenda item, but maybe it's a conversation I can have offline. But
you want to repeat the question?
The question is just simply, there are aides that have one-on-one students. They're with the district for so many hours. Others, and they were in fact entitled to the compensation increases. And there are some aides or assistants that aren't eligible for the compensation increases. So I'm trying to differentiate between the aides, the teacher assistants that get the compensation increases versus those that don't. But that's outside the lane.
It is, because they aren't certified staff, are they? No. Are they certified? They're not, so then it would be outside. The agenda item says certified staff. Presentation and discussion regarding certified staffing levels and vacancies.
Okay.
This is not certified. Am I correct?
Yeah, but the answer can clarify which ones are covered and which ones aren't by the staffing level.
Oh, just by staffing level? We can go under staffing level? Okay, great.
Awesome. And it's not an action item. I don't know if that gives us any cover, but so great question. The changes that we made to our special education aides and assistants were to reclassify program employees as assistants and one-to-one employees as aides. And so on the assistant side of the equation, well, everybody got an increase in compensation because we adjusted everybody's grade level. On the assistant side of the equation, we were able to combine some allocations by changing the staffing guidelines in order to provide more benefited positions. On the aid side of the equation, those are our one-to-one aides, and so the level of support provided is dictated by the student's IEP, individualized education plan.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
okay.
IEP.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So on the aid side of the house, their hours and support are dictated by the student needs, whereas on the program, so the strategies program, for example, there's fixed allocations based on enrollment. Does that make sense?
And they get benefits based upon the number of hours?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thanks.
Did that answer that? Staff. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's, Dr. Enfield, I would love to have you just weigh in on this. I know it was a difficult decision. There's been a lot of conversation around it, so if you would, please.
Thank you, President Taylor, and thank you, Emily. Emily has been doing yeoman's work on this and doing it with great compassion and attention to detail, and I am grateful for that. It is not easy. I just want to preface this by saying I actually was reading an article in the Washington Post today that quoted or cited the Nevada State Education Association estimating that there are currently 3,000 unfilled teaching positions in our state. So I think that that's important context. This is not a challenge unique to us. It's a challenge being faced everywhere. Clearly, and I'm going to go back to basics, we are about educating children, and we cannot educate them without teachers in our classroom. And so recognizing last week that we were still facing upwards of 200 teacher vacancies, knowing that the first day of school is this Monday, I made the very difficult decision, with consultation with Emily and our leadership team, to pull our central-based TOSAs back into the classroom, so that more of our students could have a teacher on the first day of school. I sent an email message to each of the impacted TOSAs yesterday because I know this was a decision that has created great hardship for many of them. I am deeply sorry for that. I want to say publicly, I am deeply sorry for that. The timing of this could not have been worse. A 1 week's notice before going back into the classroom is not easy, and I wish it were otherwise, but we are where we are. In addition, this will impact our central office work. It will impact supports that we can give around professional learning and other things. And it will make the lives of our central office leaders more challenging as well, because they will now be doing their work with limited teams. However, at the end of the day, I had to prioritize student learning over adult learning. This is about prioritizing our students. And I will say that I am deeply grateful to our TOSAs who are now returning to the classroom, because thanks to them and thanks to the fact that I know that they are probably working as we speak to wrap their minds around this and quickly go into planning mode so that they can be ready for their students, thanks to them, there will be probably a couple thousand students who will be guaranteed an outstanding qualified educator in their classroom welcoming them on the first day of school. We will continue, and I will provide the trustees with updates on what the impacts of this are on our district-wide work. I have heard from some across the district and some of our higher ed partners who have questions about how some of the work will continue. We are working on that, but right now we are working on getting teachers into our classrooms for our kids on the first day. I also want to publicly commit that we will begin planning for next year in about 4 weeks, because I am committed to not being in this position next year. And I believe that there are long-term strategies. Emily and I have already begun talking about them. Some long-term strategies that we can undertake that will put us in a much better position so that we won't be having to make this move. But again, I am grateful. I'm sorry for the timing, and I am grateful to our team for stepping up so that our children have teachers welcoming them on the first day of school, because that's our core business.
Thank you, Superintendent Enfield. Did you have a comment, Trustee Smith?
I did, and thank you so much for that. This is probably optimistic, but in the event that we do gain new staff members over the course of the year, could there be any potential for these roles to be filled by new coming staff members and then having TOSAs return, or is that just lovely but not likely?
So I do think it is lovely, but I don't want to set false hope. And so when I think about the total number of vacancies and the fact that we don't have enough TOSAs for the vacancies that we have, I think it's better to set the expectation that it'll be a placement for the entire year. And then, like Susan said, working on some of the longer term strategies so that they can return to their roles for next year.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that you've been working with everyone very much, and I know that because I've had a lot of contact with this. Again, only as one trustee, I support and hope that we will continue with the current approach, which is being as reasonable and supportive of the TOSAs as we can, including making sure that those that do want to return back to their TOSA status next year can, assuming those teams stay intact. We always know that every department is always up, so those are no promises there. But I appreciate what you're doing, but I just want to emphasize that we stay supportive and flexible and understanding so that they can return if those organizations are the same looking forward in future years and if we have the staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Smith. Clerk Manetto?
Thank you, Madam President. I, as one trustee and a retired teacher, am grateful that we're looking at these as permanent for the year, because it's really hard on kids to suddenly have that teacher go off somewhere. And then the new teacher comes in, and then that teacher's just peeling kids off the ceiling the rest of the year. So I'm grateful to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Manetto. Are there other comments on this? I want to just thank you for, it's a really difficult decision. And that's the tough part of leadership, is when you make a decision that you know is a tough decision and going to impact people, especially at such a late time. And just really want to thank those TOSAs, the 58 that you feel pretty strongly about, and those who are still working, and certainly respectful of the one who decided this was not for me. I wanted to be in that TOSA position. Just thank you for those, though, who are, like you said, working probably as we speak to regroup and bring themselves back up to speed and do some planning and so on. Thank you for returning to the classroom for the students, and hopefully that you're getting the support that you need. In that, the superintendent's committing to that, and hopefully it's only going to be for a short period of time. So yeah, Trustee Church.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very tough with the timing, the new superintendent. So my sympathies do go out to those folks whose lives have been disrupted going back. But I just want to again 100% support the superintendent. It shows very well. Let me phrase this carefully. It shows very well her ability to make the tough decision, knowing that it's going to be somewhat unpopular, but it's a tough decision that had to be made, so I applaud her for that.
Thank you, Trustee Church. Vice President?
I too recognize the challenge in this for so many, and I look forward to updates on the TOSA work and maybe things that need to be shored up, because now they're in the classroom, which is a wonderful thing, but then some other things are going to have to be put in abeyance, and it's good to recognize those.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Yes, please, Madam Superintendent.
Yes, and right now our focus is on supporting our TOSAs and staffing for the first day of school on Monday. Once we have school up and running, I will definitely be reporting back to the trustees what the impacts on our broader systems work will be, because these tremendous leaders are now back in the classroom where we need them. But there will be impacts. But I will come back to you in the next few weeks with that update.
Thank you very much. It'd be short-sighted to think there's no impact. Of course there is, but I think that part of what you're seeing is just a commitment to making a very difficult decision, so that as many teachers, as many students as possible have a well-trained, well-qualified, certified teacher in the classroom. So thank you, staff, for your work. Okay, this is not an action item, so there's no public comment on it, but we appreciate it. Thank you, and thank you for keeping us posted. Okay, we're going to go on to agenda item number 5. Board reports. Each trustee will have 3 minutes to provide an update with our community involvement and so on. Doesn't mean we have to take 3 minutes. It's the summertime, but I know a few things have happened. So let's see. Let's start with, I've been starting over here lately. Let's go to Dr. Nicolette. Dr. Nicolette. I've been starting over here, so I'm going to start this way. Dr. Nicolette.
Board updates, right?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I wasn't sure if you were like asking me for more opinion or what it was. So I had, I'm going to make it brief, but I visited 3 sites in our summer food program, our wonderful partnership with the Northern Nevada, how do we get that? FNN, Northern Nevada
Nutrition?
Just a minute, I'm sorry.
We don't know. We don't know.
The Food Bank of Northern
Oh,
Nevada.
geez.
I am so sorry, Food Bank of Northern Nevada. Anyway, they operate 37 sites in Washoe County. I visited 3 of them just a couple weeks ago. 3 very distinct sites. One was at Evelyn Mount, where children that attend programming there were being served lunch. It's kind of a lunch breakfast kind of thing. And the kids were just so excited, and the lady who was serving them lunches, it was almost like she was their mother, and she was serving them food, and they were just so excited to see her, and she was so excited to see them. And then we went over to Shelley Park in Sparks, where this is how flexible the Food Bank of Northern Nevada is. They were serving the dinners that are for a week, and the families would pick them up. And because Shelley Park, which is usually where they put their food truck, and it's a lovely little park, and the kids can play, and you can imagine how fun that can be. They're working on the park, and so they had to park by the fire station on the street, and they're just so flexible, and the families were so flexible, and the relationships that the employees for the food bank were distributing the food, the relationships that they were having with these families and the students especially was just so wonderful to see, because you could tell that the families appreciated the help, and the employees were so kind and respectful, and it was just a wonderful partnership. And again, this is a partnership that we have with the Food Bank of Northern Nevada and Washoe County School District, and our nutritious services. Our nutritious services pack all those boxes and order that food, and the partnership really is in figuring out how much you're going to need and how we're going to distribute it, and the funding comes from the feds through to the state, so it's not coming out of our academic programming funding, our general fund. And then I went to the Nevada Hopes. Oh, Nevada Hopes, and that was just wonderful.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm so bad at this.
I know. You got to practice at home.
I'm going to lobby for 5 minutes. Can we do a BDR? I want 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think JJ just said no. So okay, so we shot down. Trustee Mayberry.
Sure, thank you. I'll be brief.
Turn your mic on, please, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll be brief. I did the same thing. I won't pontificate any more than Vice President Nicola did, but I didn't mean that. I also went to Northern Nevada Food Bank, went to one of their food stops. Thank Nicole Limboli for setting that up. Yeah, it was really enlightening. I didn't realize that there were as many food distribution drop-offs in our community. So they do great work and partner with our district. Great stuff. Also spent some time with, I think I mentioned this last week, community and schools earlier last week, and talked with Nicole Willis-Grimes and her staff, and learned better what they do to support our needs. Of course, many of you attended the O'Brien and Hug opening. Trustee Minetto and I attended the family night at Hug High last Thursday, where they had what I understand, just sort of a groundbreaking turnout of families and students, first-time families and students attending that school. Yeah, it was phenomenal. They had our staff put together a really neat 8-minute video on sort of highlighting all the key steps, how to get around the school, where to park, where not to park. And I want to give a shout out to our communications team, because I've seen a lot of short videos lately on social media that are very informative. They're very well done. I know they spent a lot of time and effort on that. So please express my appreciation to what they're doing on the production side. And looking forward to the first day of school with my 2 little girls. Will be sophomores at Spanish Springs High School, and then I'll get to visit Hug High. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mayberry. Trustee Church. Oh, just as you drink some Dr. Pepper there, sir. Sorry about that.
My Dr. Pepper, right. My addiction. Well, thank you. Like the others, many others, I attended the Hug High and O'Brien ribbon cutting. It was wonderful. And I did have a number of meetings this past week. I met with the Big Brothers Big Sisters nonprofit. Seems like a wonderful nonprofit. I'd love to see even more involved in the community. Also, JTNN. Don't even ask me to attempt to say what that spells, but they are
Join Together Northern Nevada.
There you are. But it's mostly about drug addiction in the community that they address through various grants, and that includes any possible drug issues in the school district. So I had a wonderful meeting with them, and they do a lot of surveys and studies that we use internally. So that was a very good meeting. And then, very importantly, I am wearing my Hot August Night shirt. I was at Hot August Nights, if you saw me, mainly at the Atlantis, with two, not one, but two police cars. And it was actually amazing because I met so many people that either knew who I was or came up in the course of conversation. One lady that does grants for the state, and I'm like, you've got my ear. So it was actually, I'm going to write it off on my voucher as job-related, being at home. Well, no, but it was just a wonderful hot event.
That's on the record. So
yeah. It was a wonderful event, except for Thursday and Wednesday when the rain was incredible, much needed, but wow. Also met with the WEA new incoming president, so I had a very good meeting with him. And just in my final minute, we had a report that came out from our internal auditor on our fraud, waste, and abuse program. So I just wanted to pass that out to the community, that we do have that program. We have a very good watchdog over fraud, waste, and abuse. There's a hotline phone number if you want to play the video back if you're watching, 775-325-2020. There's an email. So if anybody internally or externally believes that there's misappropriation or waste or abuse, that's the hotline. If they're not the right folks to handle it, they can forward it to the people that are. And then finally, I am going to speak at public comment on some quality of education issues. Superintendent was told, so nothing earth-shaking, but I just wanted to give you that heads up. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Church. Trustee Smith.
Thank you. I'd first like to acknowledge that our 5-star word of the day is abeyance from Vice President Nicolette. So I had to actually Google that, so I enjoyed that.
Okay.
Okay. So on July 27th, I had the real pleasure of touring ACE High School. And ACE stands for Academy for Career Education. They have been a district-sponsored charter school for 20 years. They are actually one of the oldest charter high schools in Nevada, and that was really great. I spent some wonderful time with Bob Drews on that. So after freshman year, students focus on one of ACE's 4 career programs, and that's manufacturing, diesel technology, architecture, and advanced building trades. And they do an amazing thing, and I'm going to need JJ's help now. They build a house. This house is directly across the street from Donner Springs Elementary. Very soon it will be put up for sale through an auction. I will let everyone know. This is a huge accomplishment, and this is absolutely an example of the kind of education that we're offering through one of our district-sponsored charters. Absolutely phenomenal. So I had such a wonderful time. Moving on from that, I serve on the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Governing Board, and we had a subcommittee meeting, and I also have an upcoming governing board meeting on Thursday. I also attended the HUG ribbon cutting, which was absolutely phenomenal and a testament to all the things that can be done when the community trusts us, and we deliver on those promises. So excited about that. Also had many meetings with teachers, parents, and the superintendent. I also attended the New Educator Luncheon for teachers that are new to the profession or new to Washoe County School District. It's put on by the WEA. It's also supported by the district, so special shout out to Marissa McClish on that, and great speakers from that. I'm going to continue the Love Fest of Vice President Nicolette, because she did a wonderful, wonderful job speaking on behalf of the board. I love the way that you blend academia with heart, and it was wonderful. And we also heard from our superintendent and a student from AACT. But a standout for me, before I get to their keynote, is Galena Principal Jay Selter. He was my partner for the best handshake. Next time I see you, Principal Selter, that is the only way we can greet each other. But the keynote at the event was Michelle Trujillo, and she was from the Center of Learning and Wellbeing. She was really, really amazing with the way that she was realistic, She connected with the audience, and I really took a lot from her, particularly two things that I wrote down because I have really thought about it since then. Both were quotes. The first is Teddy Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The second was from Cornel West. You can't lead the people if you don't love the people. And as a servant leader myself, this gave me much to think about, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I was about to jump in.
Sorry, I didn't even know I was over.
It's okay. You're rapping, so all good.
You're the bomb.
All good. Trustee Rodriguez.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know you're gonna have to move and sit somewhere else next time. I know.
I can't agree with that. No, it's been a pretty busy week on my full-time job side and my trustee life as well. But I did have the pleasure of going to the O'Brien ribbon cutting with the vast majority of you guys, and I had the pleasure of being there for topping out with it's like one of the first things I did with President Taylor, and then just to see a year later, I just can't get over how a year later we have that beautiful school, and I got to give kudos to all our trades and knowing the elements that they worked in. So definitely very impressive. And I'm looking forward to the school. The school opening up. We'll have a high school freshman. It's going to be great. So I'm looking forward to that. And already arranging visits and roping in our local officials. So I'm really excited for that as well. So I do believe it takes a village to get a child educated. So I yield my time to whoever wants it.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. No. There'll be no yielding. There'll be no yielding. All right, Trustee Manetto.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I went to the ribbon cutting at O'Brien also, which was delightful. And I went to the hub ribbon cutting with several other people, and not to mention the fact that somebody didn't have any green on Adam Mayberry. And then following later on that week, I went with Adam to the family information night, which was full. Don't you think it was full? I think it was full.
It was full. By the way, the governor didn't have green on either.
Did I?
He had other schools to go to. And then I went to Washoe County School District Academy at TMCC with the principals. It was amazing. And the leaders, it was amazing. And this woman, she shared about her life in a delightful and very vulnerable way that I appreciated a lot. And just to add to the architecture, TMCC is now offering a bachelor's degree in architecture. I went to the new educators luncheon, which was delicious, not to mention just fun. And I need to tell you that NASB is having their national conference in November up at Toho. We got an email about it, so be looking for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we're having problems with the live stream. Is it out?
It sounds like it's an issue from YouTube that John is working on.
Okay. Is it? Do we continue it as an action item? But what do we?
So what is out?
The live stream.
Yeah, I think we have to stop for that.
Can I comment?
Are they not quite sure when it will be fixed?
Let me look at this, but I'd rather stop and let me look
Sure.
and do something.
Okay. Well, yes, it is, but just from an open meeting law standpoint. Did you want to say something on this?
I think the OMC is very clear that technical difficulties beyond our control don't kill a meeting.
Okay, well, he wants to check it out, be sure.
That's my understanding as well.
Thank you, Councilor Church. Thank you, Councilor Church. We're gonna go with this counselor right here.
Yeah, I got it.
And just, no, I appreciate that, but why don't we let's take, and I know there are those who are waiting, so I apologize. I know that you're waiting, but we want to make sure we're in compliance with state law, so let's just give it 10 minutes, and hopefully that'll do it, and then we'll come on back. So please stay with us, be patient. Again, I apologize, not much we can do. Okay? We'll be recessed and we'll jump back in. All right, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We are back on. And so we want to go ahead and we'll continue with our board report. I'm sorry that we missed our student because we certainly always want to have the student report, although they're just getting started. So probably not much yet, but she lives in Incline. And needs to get home while it's safe to do so. Last trustee to give my report. I'll be really quick. We've all mentioned the O'Brien ribbon cutting. What an amazing building that is, and I'm so excited for the people in that community. A brand new middle school for that segment of our population. I'm very excited for them. Then of course Hug High School. Hug High School. I need to pause appropriately for my alma mater. The ribbon cutting there was awesome, and the Feimster family was there. The Hug family was there. I met the grandson of William O'Brien, after the ribbon cutting. He said, "I didn't even know you were here. I would have acknowledged you." The son and granddaughter. So it was very cool just to meet them at O'Brien, and then the Hug family was there at Hug, and so it's just great the community connections and the tie into that. Let's see. Also, block party. There's a block party in the community, primarily a faith-based event, but it's really a community-wide event, and our people were out there with a table for recruiting, and with a table for family and family and school and family partnerships, where they are working their table as they always are. Back to community connection, community engagement, always been there. And man, it was about 2,000 degrees out there, and it was hot. It was hot, but they were there doing their jobs, out there connecting with people, inviting people to join the Washoe County School District team, and so that was amazing. And I spent most of the last week. I'll just say this: I was in D.C. with my family, and one of the highlight of that trip was a National Museum of African American History and Culture. Just a lot of great museums there. We got a chance to see a lot of things, all the monuments and so on. It just reminds me of how great our country is. And even with all the stuff that we have going on and all the things that I can sometimes really just make me frustrated, it's just a great country, and a country that I will always love. But it reminded me when I went into that, as much as I know about my own history, and that part of the history is the history of our country, there's still so much that we just can't cover all of it. And that's why it's important to continue to tell, as I always say, the whole story of our history. I mean, that's a dark part of our past as a country, but there's some great stories that came out of that, and we saw a lot of those stories, and just reminds us of how resilient we are as a country, and how we still have found a way, most of the time, to still come together and be a great country and stand together. So great reminder, kind of reminded me and connected me to here why I do what I do here. So that's my report, and I'm yielding no time, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Taylor. And I will just echo, that is an amazing museum. Yes, there's not enough time to see it in one day.
Great cafe, too, by the way.
Yes, there's a great cafe. So I will try to make this brief. I just want to acknowledge, I asked Ivy if there was anything I could share on her behalf since she had to leave. She said no. But we talked a little bit about getting the Student Advisory Council up and running, and we're very excited for that. She's a tremendous young person. Look forward to working with her. I shared earlier the decision around the TOSAs, how difficult that was and how sorry I am. We will continue to support them. I will also say that I had a really productive, extensive meeting with Kaylin Evans, the head of our Washington Educators Association, and we're working on some other ways that we can Washoe.
Different W.
So, okay, in my own defense here, my bad, but in WEA in Washington State was the Washington Education. So every time I hear, I will be deprogrammed eventually, but just give me a little bit of time. My apologies. The Washoe Educators Association.
Just say Nevada right.
Okay, there you go. Our Educators Association. I want to thank Kalen for his time, and he and I have some ideas in place for providing some additional supports to our teachers as we kick off the new year, and we plan to be sharing that at the end of this week or early next week, so stay tuned for that. I do want to say that the new teacher luncheon, it's not just teacher, it's nurses, counselors, others, so I need to be clear on that, was wonderful, and I loved being able to greet our new teachers and staff. I want to thank, I believe it was Atlantis, Grand Canyon University, the Education Alliance, and WEA who all made this happen, and of course our amazing team. Can't wait for it next year. I did want to provide one quick update on transportation, given that the start of school is Monday. And I hope I get the terminology right. If Scott Lee were here, he would help me. But last Friday was bid day, I believe it's called, and that's where the drivers show up to bid on the routes that they want to take. And inevitably, we have some no-shows, which complicates our ability to figure out how many routes we can staff. Every driver showed up.
Right.
So,
First
and
time, right?
Scott said that it's, I mean, in recent memory, it's a first. So I want to thank the trustees and the staff for investing in increasing those salaries. We think that made a difference. I really want to thank all of our drivers for showing up and Scott and his team for doing such a good job. Now, unfortunately, we are still going to begin the school year next week with our area rotation plan in place. But we believe that because we had such a good showing Friday and because we've been able to recruit and train more, that we'll be able to transition to the daily hub system sooner rather than later. So stay tuned. But I am hopeful that we'll be able to move away from that as quickly as possible. Just very, very quickly, I know that there have been questions around charters. We do have 4 charter buses to help with our middle school and high school routes. There was a question around why not more. This was the only charter bus company that we could contract with, and they're short-staffed. So it's the domino effect, right? So we're doing the best we can. We are utilizing a few of our mechanics and a print shop employee to help drive. So I just want the trustees and the community to know we really are trying to do everything in the short term that's creative to do that. And we are advertising payment for families who do have to transport their own children on those off days, and we're putting that up on the website as well. So really doing all we can to mitigate the impacts of the transportation challenges that we're having. And I will just end with this because I want to hear from our community and public comment. We did have an extraordinary leadership academy on Friday. Thanks to our amazing team for putting it together. But it was, Vanjie estimates around 400 principals, assistant principals, deans, central office staff. And the energy in the room was just so positive. It was so incredibly positive, and there's just a sense of hope and excitement in the air. And I did share with them a little preview of the entry plan, but I also shared what I'm calling our 4 C's that's sort of going to drive us this year. And the first one is coherence. How do we make sure that we have coherence across our system, that all of our schools understand and are working towards the same thing, and that our families can rely on whatever school they're going to, they're getting the same high quality and messaging. So coherence, care. I think it's still really important that we care for ourselves and one another, and of course our students. Communication. Cannot over communicate, so really committing to making sure we're communicating internally and externally with the community. And finally, celebration. Celebration is really, really important. And over the last couple of years, it was hard on some days to find reasons to celebrate. And so my goal this year is, yes, we will own our areas for improvement and all of that, but gosh darn it, we are going to celebrate our students and staff and community every chance we get, because we have a lot of reasons to be hashtag WCSD proud, and I want to make sure that we're sharing that with the world. And so with that, I am giddy with excitement for the first day of school. I will be riding a school bus at some ungodly hour of the morning, I think. And I will be joined by our new deputy superintendent. Sang will be with me. She will be coming on board. So next week is going to be a good week. So my thanks to everyone on staff and in the community for doing everything we can to be ready. And here's to a really, really tremendous school year for everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Let's go to our closing public comment. We know we have some folks here from Curl that want to share with us, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So, JJ, and others, others who may be here for public comment as well.
Stephanie Vega.
Ms. Vega, welcome back.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Dr. Stephanie Vega. I'm a parent of a Washoe County School District student, and I'm also a teacher in this district. And I wish to comment on 4.01, the entry plan for the superintendent. Phase 1, by connecting, listening, learning, and building relationships with our community members, our teachers, and students and staff. Sounds great on slides. And I hope that that is something that we can really see come to fruition. With the drastic directed transfer of the TOSAs, it's very difficult for our teachers to build trust and to know that the decision was made with care and listening and learning. We, as teachers, we come together, we help each other, and we lost our entire infrastructure of support by our consulting teachers. If we teachers had really understood and known that we would lose that access to curriculum expertise, instructional support, professional learning, it's even the Department of Gifted and Talented and MTSS that helps us identify and troubleshoot for students that have special needs or might need to be evaluated for special needs. The support, we lost our department that has the support for English language learners. Like, these are major equity and diversity issues that we don't have because these TOSAs were reassigned. I wondered if, we could have at least had a forum or a little bit more creative problem solving. I think that our teachers who are dual credentialed, like myself, who are special education teachers, we would have stepped up and agreed to take a look at those 1-year unfilled positions so that we could have the people who are experts, our TOSAs, stay in their specialty areas. Right now it feels like they are being put as bodies in the room so that we have someone there. A lot of these undesirable unfilled positions are special education positions or areas outside of our TOSA's licensure. And I feel like, we really need to honor the people that are doing this and come up with some other creative solutions. I wish that there would be more care going forward and forethought and sufficient notice to the teachers, as the decision was made on July 26th, and the notice was given after the administrators' kickoff on August 5th, after those very important people and very important TOSAs presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vega.
Melissa Nordine.
Welcome, Ms. Mordine.
Hi, Madam President. Thank you for having me today. I'll try to make this not emotional as possible because I'm wearing makeup and I have a meeting after this, so, got to keep it together. All right, Madam President, in the beginning of this meeting, you spoke about what strength was. And I feel that strength is something, as a parent of Coral Academy, that I truly have the ability to speak on this. I personally am a business owner of a business here in Reno and Sparks, Nevada. And I am a survivor of domestic violence. Gotta keep it together. I am helping Coral currently to beautify their school. But more importantly, my children and I are the survivors of domestic violence. Coral Academy, their staff, and their educational system has been second to none to not only myself, but my children. Safety, as you can imagine, is a large part of my decision for where my children go, to the school that they go to where they are in life. Coral Academy has helped my children feel safe when they weren't. Working with the Eddy House and creating their signage and donating their vehicle wrap and utilizing my personal customers to fill their vehicle, so I had the chance to actually speak to their clients, their teenage clients, their adolescents, and they spoke to me and said they love schools, they love teachers that will actually listen to them, that will support them and make them feel safe when they don't have that safety at home. Now, unfortunately, Safe Embrace will be closing on the day school opens this year. Oh. And that breaks my heart. Safe Embrace is part of Domestic Violence Resource Center. I believe that, Coral Academy did help me and my children, and it is unfair that not only, to take that away from another parent that could be seeking that help and that guidance that their child might need, and having them that safety, that feeling of belonging and trust that Coral provides. And also, Coral is one of the best educations that are in Northern Nevada at this point in time. As we've said during the course of this meeting, and I'll bring it back to basics, these children need to feel safe. Obviously, they're not going to have their domestic violence resource center anymore. These children are going to the Eddy House where they don't feel safe, even going home or doing anything that they that they can do. Make them feel safe where they can be. So I believe in opening a new place for Coral, a new location. I do thank you guys for all your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mordine. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Fiaz Tandogan. Was I close?
Fezzi.
Very close. Good afternoon.
Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Anfield, President Taylor, and members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Feyzi Tendogan, Executive Director, Coral Academy of Science. I have been with Coral Academy since 2000, when Coral Academy opened our middle school at Washington and 2nd Street downtown. We have been proud to have Washoe County School District as our sponsor. We are proud that all of you have recognized Coral's academic achievements. On behalf of Coral Academy community, we welcome you, Dr. Anfield, and to the Board of Trustees. We thank you for your support of school choice and your time and your questions. We are excited about our sponsored proposed Sky Mountain campus so that we can bring Coral Academy STEM education to an elementary school in Northwest Reno. As you understand, it is difficult to find a building that can work for a school. And when we find one, we need to consider whether that is an area of Washoe County that we are not already serving. In the case of the proposed building, it is very exciting because our last purchase and remodel was also converted from fitness center into a school. And that is today our South Elementary School on Neal Road. It has worked very well. In its second year, we already have about 430 students enrolled, which is considerably above the number of students we need to cover expenses. One more point I wish to make. As you see in the document titled Adherence to Section 8 of the Charter Contract Agreement, in the opinion of the Attorney of the Coral Education Corporation, Coral Academy of Science has not violated the Charter Contract Agreement. I pledge to you we have followed procedures for keeping the school district informed that we have followed with expansions in the past. Our intent has always been the same, to find a way to finance buildings ourselves so that we can bring STEM education to the children of Washoe County. It is your right to establish a new process, but I want you to know that for the months between the option to purchase being signed by Coral Education Corporation and the time we came before you in June, we believed, based upon precedent, that we were following this board's Washoe County School District intended process. Finally, I would like to acknowledge all the communication and meetings we have engaged in with the Washoe County School District Charter Expansion Committee. We have worked hard, and so have they. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tandoran.
Thank you.
Nicole Pfeiffer.
Is it Pfeiffer? Pfeiffer. Welcome, Ms. Pfeiffer.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good after evening, almost. Good Superintendent Enfield, President Taylor, and members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Nicole Pfeiffer, and I'm the Human Resource Director for Coral Academy of Science. I want to start by thanking you, Dr. Enfield, for your remark as quoted by News 4 that you want to make sure that we're celebrating those folks who are doing extraordinary work each and every day. Those are the people whom I've helped to find and hire to teach our students at Coral Academy. We look forward to making you proud. Trustees, you'll recall that there were 42 solid minutes of testimony from 16 individuals in favor of Coral Academy and its expansion request at the June 28th Board of Trustees meeting, plus over 50 written public comments in support as well. In your materials, you've received a one-page enrollment support. Excuse me, I don't do public speaking often.
Oh, it's okay. You're doing fine.
An enrollment support document, and you'll see that South Elementary School achieved break-even during its first year, and then it will achieve even better than break-even in its second year. Break-even means it receives enough per pupil funding to pay facility staff and operations costs. As you'll also see, Coral Academy knows the number of students it needs each year at the proposed Sky Mountain campus to achieve break even, which is 273 students in the first year, then 481, and then 529. Coral has already received almost 600 letters of interest after just a small amount of outreach and over a year before opening. And some of those are from families with more than one child who might attend that Sky Mountain campus. In addition, a petition to support this expansion request has received 1,183 responses. I think you can agree that this is an amazing amount of support and interest, and it makes me, as part of our Coral community, feel great that so many families do want to join us. I think that you can see that Coral's enrollment projections are strong and that they're entirely separate from enrollment trends in the Washoe County School District. I ask that you consider this information as you make your decision on Coral's expansion request, and I ask that it be made soon so that the Coral Academy is not prevented from accomplishing the remodel of the building by unnecessary delays, causing us to miss opening our new school with your help in 1 year. That's exciting to think of. You also, Superintendent, has stated that we're here to educate children, and Coral Academy has a proven record of doing just that. We graciously ask that you approve our request. We also thank you for your support of school choice, and I look forward to your support of the Coral Academy expansion request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer.
Halil Kenbeckel.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. President Taylor. Good afternoon. My name is Halil Kembakli. I'm the Director of Business and Finance for Coral Academy of Science. Welcome aboard, Dr. Enfield, President Taylor, and Board of Trustees. Good to see you again. I would like to read for you that this is not just our Executive Director and I. It's the whole bond team made of expert underwriters, lawyers, and others who examined our revenues, expenses, our enrollment projections, and the cost of the bond, and determined we can afford another school. We are fiscally very conservative. We have strong reserves. The expert Wall Street analysts believe in Coral for a reason. In that presentation too, the District Expansion Committee brought up some concerns, and it made sense that you, as trustees, had questions also. We as a team at Coral, working with individuals with experience, have examined those concerns carefully. Our analysis and conclusions are in the document titled No Financial Risk to Washoe County School District. The bottom line, there is no risk that Washoe County School District will have to pay liabilities left by Coral Academy. First, Coral presents no risk because it will reach and exceed its break-even enrollment targets. We have large number of interested families for this location, even though we are 1 year away from the school start date. Second, the types of potential liabilities for the district expansion committee discussed do not apply to Coral Academy, as they did the small I Can Do Anything charter school, which was their example school. So we are a large, high-performing charter school with a 22-year of history of paying PERS, unemployment, insurance, and OPEB liabilities fully and on time. In a worst-case scenario in which a new campus was not successful, there might be a small amount of OPEB benefits to be funded each month. And the Coral Academy as a network has far more than enough annual cash flow to fund their liability on an ongoing basis should one occur. You may be aware the expansion committee offered to recommend approval if Coral accepted one or the other two options. One was to enter a 5-year lease to purchase instead of purchasing the building outright. The seller of this building rejected that. Moreover, that is not financially viable for Coral, as who knows that what building will cost in 5 years, and how would we fund the 10 improvements needed to turn the building into a school. We estimate a leasing approach would cost Coral at least $2 million more and making financial harder, not easier. The other option was to place a very large amount of funds in escrow against potential future liability to the district for a number of years until Coral reaches target enrollment numbers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming back. We appreciate it.
Amber Spencer.
Welcome, Ms. Spencer.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amber Spencer, and I am the Vice President of Coral Academy PTBC, which is our Parent Teacher Booster Club. I have been given 2 assignments. The first is to make certain that you are aware that you have received a comprehensive document that addresses all of the concerns raised by Washoe County School District staff and questions raised by you as trustees. The second is to emphasize to you that we of Coral Academy cannot wait, and we do not deserve to be forced to wait any longer. If anyone has any questions, we really need them to communicate with Faizi and Halil immediately. We implore you to give us an answer very soon so that you may approve the expansion request at your next meeting on August 23rd. Now I have a couple of more things to share. As a representative of parents who put a lot of time and care into our children being able to attend Coral Academy, we really do not understand these suggestions that a Coral school would fail. However, the staff have put our team through a very detailed level of analysis, and we have shown that we will succeed, as we have done with the last 2 expansions that occurred through a much smoother process. Honestly, our community feels frustrated, hurt, and bewildered by the 180-degree change in approach. You remember that staff under the previous superintendent recommended that you deny our expansion application. But our community rose up and shared with you how important STEAM education is at Coral Academy, and you trustees listened, and we really do appreciate that. Thank you. Now, if we can't hear that this expansion approval will move forward at the next meeting, we will question whether or not hurdles are intentionally being placed in our path. We do not want to miss the opportunity to have the Sky Mountain School open 1 year from now to welcome new students, and of course, a delay would put that at risk. I just want to close by saying that my personal experience with Coral is that it is a wonderful place to be a school leader and to work. It is wonderful to be able to excite children about learning, and as Nevadans, we have the right to be part of a bold charter school network that works hard for its students and teachers, yet we need your approval, and I respectfully ask you for that. You two are working very hard for the benefit of students, families, and teachers, and I really do thank you for all of your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer.
Dr. Engin Arslan.
Welcome back, Mr. Arslan.
Thank you.
Dr.
Good afternoon
Arslan,
to
please
everyone. Good afternoon, Superintendent Enfield and the members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Engin Arslan. I am Professor of the Computer Science at Adjourn and President of the Board of Directors for Coral Academy of Science. Before making my comments, I'm going to finish up what Halil started but couldn't finish because of the time limit. So the other option that were given to the Coral was to place a very large amount of the funds in escrow against any potential future liability for Washoe County for a number of years until Coral reaches target enrollment numbers. So for us, we believe that this doesn't make sense because if the expansion committee is concerned that it will take time to meet our enrollment targets, then why would they want to tie up a lot of our flexible reserves that can be used to fill any gaps if enrollment is slow? In other words, if the fear is that we might struggle in years 1 or 2, it is counterproductive to draw cash out of our reserves when we would need them at the time. The escrow might cause the campus to fail, not to save it. So this is the second option that we also believe that it's not a viable option. So in short, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I'm just going to make my comment, which is that I just simply want to emphasize that we feel that we have gone above and beyond the expectations in our work to assure that the district staff to address the assure that to district staff that their concerns are not applicable to our expansion project. And quite honestly, I am surprised that we take all the responsibility to finance our school building ourselves so that we have the opportunity to provide a great education to our students, which include my children who attend to Coral Academy. So we have been successful for 22 years and will continue to be so. So we have answered all the questions and we have been very patient in this process. So we kindly ask you to allow us to move forward with the expansion project in the next meeting so that we can start the education in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arslan.
Jeff Church.
Mr. Church, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Here I am with my hot August night shirt. Basically, I wanted to be here, so I have a handout for the record. Some newly released documents from the school district on quality of education. We have our ACT scores out, as well as SBAC, and I won't go into detail about what those are. There's also 2 new studies that were done. An article in the Reno Gazette referred to students scoring at a high level. I think that's a typo. It's a higher level. It's, for lack of a better word, a dismal level. It's not a high level. When you have 66% of students that don't meet the standard under SBAC for math, that's not a high level, that's a dismal level, and it's a slight improvement over last year. But I did my own research from that press release, and based on the pre-COVID, I looked at 2018, we saw a 3% drop in SBAC ELA and a 7% drop in math for the SBAC. So pre-COVID, a 7% drop. So that's not acceptable. ACT scores, we improved from 17.4 to 17.5 for Washoe County. Statewide, we're 17.9. That places us last in the nation. Mississippi is 18.2. So we are below state average. So there's a lot of factors. I totally support the superintendent. She's brand new and getting back to basics, wonderful, but I wanted to put those on the record. I was very troubled by the lack of a press release on ACT. I was very troubled by the press release that came out not listing all of the factors, and that's why I felt obligated to come up here and to speak. That handout's on the record. 2 different studies that also came out in 2022. One of them, EdWeek, places us 49th in the nation. Sorry, New Mexico. And the other study places us 46th nationwide, and that's scholaroo.com. That's, again, in your handout. So, excuse me, but I just wanted to put those on the record. We have a lot of factors. You know, we're not Idaho, we're not Utah. We have a high immigrant population, English language to overcome. We have people working in the casinos at night, and the kids are not supervised like they. So we have a lot of things that are outside of our control, but still it's not a reason to roll over. It's a reason to take that as a challenge. So that's why I have all the faith in the world. Our superintendent will do that. 22 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Church.
Jennifer Parlane.
Parlane. Welcome, Ms. Is it Parlane?
It is Parlane.
Parlane, welcome, Ms. Parlane.
Park Lane Mall without the K.
Oh, Parlane, okay.
My name is Jennifer Parlane, and I'm a parent, and I'm here to advocate for the director and the students of the Damani Ranch High School Marching Band. Marching Band is an inclusive sport. There's about 100 kids participating, and it's really great because it's all equal. Nobody gets benched. Everyone has a very important part to play. In the 7 years I've been cheering for this band, I've watched Damani Ranch High School systematically starve this group, which is a huge part of what they call their signature academy. So I'm here to request that the board investigate the equitable student distribution use of resources and facilities, personnel resources, and the lack of funding that the Signature Performing Arts Academy has at Damani Ranch High School. Through the years, the use of facilities and scheduling has been a daily challenge. This band has routinely been denied necessary use of the stadium, the practice field, the gym space, always to prioritize sports group access before band students. This year, the VP entered the scheduling meeting and announced that the sports team schedule would take priority over all of their activities. Currently, the marching band, with the state marching band title, has to defend its title, and it's scheduled in the stadium to rehearse one time in October. That's it. They don't get facilities use. Last winter season, the indoor percussion, we have a nationally ranked winter guard and indoor percussion group, were not allowed at all to use the gym. We were told that it was only for basketball students. I went in to speak with the VP about that. He told me that The gyms are for basketball only, that there were 6 other groups requesting to use them, and he was denying all 6 groups. Again, I ask for equitable use of facilities at the school. I do feel like because there are so few funds that are here for the school and for the band, band has turned into a pay-for-play system. It has turned into, if you want your kid to do this, then you have to pay. So the parents pay $800 per student if we are able to fundraise $45,000 on top of that. The school gives the Signature Academy program $1,200 per year. That's their budget. We spend $100,000 in a year to get our kids to be able to do so many different things. Through the last 7 years, the school has made fundraising really problematic. They regularly refuse the director to pay expenses from school accounts with the money that we have fundraised as parents. And they don't let us have stadium sponsors or game concessions. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Perlin. I'm sorry I have to stop you. Thank you so much.
I'll send you a letter.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Gary Slattengren.
I'm sorry, help me, sir. What's your last name?
Gary Slattengren.
Slattengren, just like you said. Okay, welcome, sir.
Yeah, and I'm here to talk on the same subject that Ms. Parlene did. I have a son that's involved in the music program. The systematic denial of use of the facilities it's been going on for quite a while. The amount of students involved in music is about equal to those that are involved in the sports programs, and yet we don't have use of the facilities. I would lay money that if you went back to the blueprints when the high school was built, it would say gym, not basketball court, that it would say stadium, not football field. And I want to talk about how the music program, the competition goes out of state to perform. We have schools from out of state coming to our facility, and they enjoy it. One of the specific things is non-use of the gym. We went to competition in Stockton, and the performers lost track of their beat because of the echo in the gym. They weren't able to practice and overcome that obstacle. I wanted to say also that the band, or the music program, those students perform better academically than the average in our schools. The last 2 years, the valedictorians came from music program. Also wanted to mention that there are 2 individuals that are professional musicians. They perform in groups that they get paid. Lastly, I want to invite each of you, come out. Watch our performances. You will be impressed.
Thank you, Mr. Slattengren.
Helen Slattengren.
Welcome, Ms. Slattengren.
Good afternoon. My name is Helen Slattengren. He's my husband, and he speaks most part that I would like to say. My son is in the band program. Actually, we live in Washoe Valley. We had to take a variance to go to the Monty Ranch High School because of their PAC program. And both my boys are in the music program, and they were very benefited from the organization there. And they were encouraged and motivated to do their best. So they're not only just do the good at their instrument, their music, they academically perform very well as well. So I just would like continue on with their request there. I would like to have an audit to equally usage of our facilities. Because like my husband said earlier, last year we totally didn't get much use of the winter drum line. The sports, they book a block of time in the gym, which we only need a specific hours, like a few hours a week to go there practice, but they block the time, and we're not able to go in there practice. And during the actual competition, because the lack of practicing in the gym, they couldn't log the track of the time there. They lost, the count. So, and also the funding, and just an instrument, a simple clarinet will cost $1,200, and our funding is like $1,200 for the music program. How do you replace all the instruments and all these things we need? And this year we have to come up with $880 for the band fees. And our band director and all the BPOs, they tried so hard to fundraising, try to reduce that the fees. And the band director and the BPO determined every kids who wants to participate in the band, we do not want finance to be a burden for them. So we want to see if you can do a research on that to do for the funding. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Ladengren.
Greg Kitchingham.
Is it Kitchingham, sir?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you. My name is Greg Kitchingman. I also am a parent of a band member at DeMonte Ranch High School. 3 years ago, my son, who was graduated 8th grade and slated to go to Spanish Springs, came up and said, "Dad, I really want to try out for the PAC program at DeMonte Ranch." And so we went, and he tried out, and he got in, and we got a variance, and Dad got tired of driving all the way to DeMonte every day, so we ended up moving down in that direction. Most exciting first year I ever had. I didn't know much about marching bands. I certainly knew nothing about drumline and what they do and what all has been involved. Over the last 2 out of the 3 years, obviously, has been a wonderful growing experience. And this year, as Vice President of the Band Parent Organization, I've gotten a little more involved in understanding the finances, the fundraising, meeting wonderful parents who donate their time, their trucks, their trailers, who cook meals and feed the kids, who travel to all our competitions, both in town as well as out of state, to push equipment on the field and off the field within the allotted time, so we don't get point deductions. One of the senior projects that a senior took on was removing over 100 trophies that surrounded the inside of the band room because there just wasn't room for any more trophies. And believe me, we are planning on replacing those trophies. But what you've already heard about the inequity, I love sports. Every Friday night I'm going to be at their football game. And during the winter, I'm going to be at the basketball game. My son played soccer, raced on ski teams, played baseball. He's dedicated now fully to band because of his commitment to the band. I just wish that the school was a little more committed to a performing arts center, signature band, and color guard that really brings a lot of light, shines a lot of light to DeMonte Ranch High School. And I'm hoping the board could possibly look into also supporting the marching band and the over 100 kids, which are amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ketchiman.
Pablo Nava Duran.
Welcome back, Mr. Duran.
Welcome back. So shout out to the Miami Ranch marching band over here. So I know the new award was done for the Miami Ranch High School, despite being close to Worcester High School, but we were done for the Miami Ranch High School. So I want to talk about the butt petition issue on the first week of school. Are not provide students who from this Newark area are not going to the Miami Ranch High School. Most of them not going to Miami Ranch High School because they cannot get the bus transportation to arrive to and from because they're relying on bus transportation. They cannot afford a car or a gas station to get to from the Miami Ranch High School. So that's very sad to see how it goes. And actually, they're going to miss the spirit week of first week of school at the RHS and a welcome back assembly over there. So that's very sad for see. And I had to my sister is in 7th grade Pine, which is good for next 2 years. Then I had to reconsider finding a nearby school, taking them on the variance to a nearby school if everybody accept it because we cannot. I don't have a car to drive, so I don't want to get I don't want to get the financial burden for my sister to the Miami High School, despite we're zone 4. So I think about getting a variance to a nearby school, someone else, which is good news for this guy who wants to spend a PAP program. So good for this guy. So, and also, if I know I tell you, I did tell you, I will tell you again. So if but petition if does not resolve, then we have to resume from the Miami High School in that Patricia and Newark area. But we have to follow the zoning advisory rules. That's my my opinion. So I don't want to break any rules. And also, the very sad news is that we don't have art class and the marching band at Pine Middle School anymore. So really sad to see. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Duran.
The board received emails from Richard Peterson, Kathy Logan, Sarah Adler, Kendra Fox, Jenny Anderson, and Megan Beckham.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all who came out to share your public comments with us on tonight. I think that's it. That's it for us. This concludes our meeting. Excuse me. This concludes our meeting. Our next meeting of the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is on August 23rd right here at 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.